All right.
Okie dokie. Well, if that works, and I think that everybody is pretty much ready to listen.
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
I think we can get going.
Yeah, just make sure that you're recording and everyone has a drink, everyone's good to go.
Yeah, I'm recording.
Okay, I do. I normally don't present, with a drink, but it's okay. Last day of vacation, right? Okay, so we will start. I must have kept the slides in. So this is just actually a little bit about the organization that I volunteer with. I usually start with a bit of an introduction. I think most of you know who I am. But to the new folks, I am Queen. My actual name that I go by in real life outside of Buddytown is Chris, and I am, well, Jesus, I'm 32 now. And I'm a trans woman, and I came out about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I also volunteer with this organization called PFLAG. And back in the day when it started, it used to stand for Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. And now that's kind of an old, outdated, archaic thing. So we just kind of kept it because it had some notoriety. And we just serviced the entire population, no, the whole community, right? And we now refer to that as the 2SLGBTQI community. And so I will always begin every presentation with the 101 style, which is what the hell do all of those letters and numbers mean? Which is usually the first question people have when I say the acronym. They say, what's the I? What's the 2S? What's that one? What's that one? So with that, I will say that if you have questions, definitely, I don't know if we have figured out a kind of way to address who's got their hands up kind of thing. Did we think about that?
Yeah, I was thinking either flashlights or torches. I have a couple torches on me and can make more if needed. I'll drop them inside this box right here.
Being like the moderator for that.
Yeah. So maybe just
behind us that I can turn on when it gets dark and torch on me.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have a flashlight or a torch and you have a question, just kind of take it out and we'll just wait for your turn. Like it's kind of the same as putting up your hand.
All right, sounds great. So yeah, ask questions. It's cool. Again, I always say it is a safer space to ask questions in. If you are scared to ask some questions to people in your actual life, and you also know that there's certain things you shouldn't be just asking randomly, ask me here if you want to know. I will tell you. We will talk about it frankly, openly, and you can take what you've learned here and move on with that in your actual day-to-day life. But ask the awkward things here. Get it out. There's no judgment. So PFLAG is actually a national charitable organization. We are a small branch of PFLAG in what's called Durham region. Cooper knows about where that is. Cliff, anyone local knows what Durham region is. And so we are not for profit. We are actually entirely volunteer run. We do a lot of support and education. I personally work on the education team. I volunteer with the education team, and I do a lot of these types of seminars, which is what has kind of started this to happen. We are the only nonprofit. Oh, geez. Okay, work on your mic there, or your whatever it is, your speaker. So we are the only nonprofit direct support and service provider in the region. We have all sorts of different programming. Our biggest thing is something called Camp Rainbow Phoenix, where we send kids to ages 13 to 17 to summer camp. And we pay for all of it because we do a lot of fundraising. And it's like one of the only ones of its kind. So we are all entirely volunteer run. We do things that I do. I don't make money for it. Oh, look at that, fancy. So I do have goals generally with the the presentations that I have, and it's usually it's pretty obvious, pretty common. So I want to create a shared understanding of the terms and the issues, so that you understand what the hell people are talking about when they talk about these things to you, and to have actual tangible or effective. So tangible meaning things you can actually touch, things you can actually use, real effective tools to actually engage with and talk to an ally, show your allyship to the community in your personal life. And you can use this in professional situations too, and I advise you do, and on Buddy Town when you're talking with your buddies. So like I mentioned, you can ask questions whenever. Cat or Slime is going to help me with that, so kind of smack them around and let me know if you have a question, or say something if we're not paying attention, because that happens all the time too, very often. Like I said, even honestly in real life, when I do these things, I will just go start talking, and people are like, "Hi, hello, hi, I have a question." Like, sometimes just yell at me; it's fine. I get it. Are the slides are all working for everyone so far?
Yep, they're working for me.
Working great.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome, perfect, great. So when I talk about the acronym, you'll notice that Two-Spirit kind of shows up in both slots. And that's because it's a little bit tricky to totally put into the same boxes as we would every other orientation and identity and assignment that we think about in a traditional kind of European, so to speak, way. But essentially, here is kind of a breakdown of what they all are, and I'm going to go into each one in individual in detail. So, on the sexual orientation part of things, we've got lesbian, gay, bi, pan, queer, usually, and Two-Spirit, but not like kind of part of it. We'll talk about it. The gender identity, you've got Two-Spirit, and again, we'll talk about that. And then transgender. But really, is your only gender identity is you're transgender or not. And sex assignment. That's I. I don't know if the same person is here as yesterday, but somebody yesterday was asking, "Oh, what's the I?" Well, the I is intersex, and again, we'll talk about each one in detail, exactly what it all means. But I like to break it down to start this way, so that you can see it's not just all one thing. All the letters aren't just about being some kind of gay, right? It's a little bit more detailed than that. So we start with Two-Spirit, and that is in the spirit of reconciliation, because we need to understand that these people and these cultures were here before we were. I say we as in colonizers, European descent and otherwise, who just kind of showed up here, and we weren't here first. We appropriated a lot of this stuff, and there's a lot of things in the culture that we really don't understand. And I will, full disclosure, I am a colonizer and of European descent. I'm not native whatsoever, so I really don't have much place to talk about a lot of this. But what I can tell you is that Two-Spirit is a modern term. It was created back in, I believe, the mid or late 90s. I think it was Winnipeg or somewhere about there, and it was a pan-Indigenous conference, and they had to replace a word that they were using, which was extremely offensive. So they decided to just create Two-Spirit, and Two-Spirit covers a wide variety of different kind of roles, like gender roles, societal roles, right? Each culture, each nation was different. If you're wondering what FNMI, so it's First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. So as some people might say Indian, like you shouldn't, because it's not really accurate at all. First Nations, right? Indigenous peoples. So generally the Two-Spirit part of it usually refers to the person that has a masculine and feminine spirit, so kind of both. And it's, as a result, generally these people are very well respected in society, in their culture, because they have more access, they have more spirit inside of them, they have better link to the creator. So some people who are Two-Spirit also identify with things like queer or trans or gay, but some don't. Like, it's kind of up to them. And that's because it's not the same as the rest. So you can be multiple things. And it's really not appropriate for people who are not Indigenous to use that to say, because I can't say that I'm Two-Spirit. I'm definitely not, because I am a super white person. There's no way. That's pretty racist. That's awful. Don't do that. That's hot tip number one. Don't say you're Two-Spirit if you're a white person. Don't do it. So I hope that this video works. It's a really amazing video. I don't know if the speakers, like the sound is going to be good. Give me some feedback on that. Let's find out. Is that loud or what?
The audio from the video doesn't seem to be coming.
Yeah, I can't hear.
No.
Oh, wait.
Energy.
How's that?
Louder, please.
Indigenous peoples.
Perfect.
Historically, Indigenous people, or what we call Two-Spirit today, were held with esteem for the vital contributions they had to. For Indigenous people today, life continues to be a journey of respect, inclusion, and stewardship. Each person is essential, offering purpose, value, and a responsibility to their community. Social roles within Indigenous societies cannot be compared to Western gender norms, as social positioning develops out of the individual's skill, spirit, ability, and age, as gifted to them by the Creator. Before Europeans colonized North America and settled on Turtle Island, Indigenous peoples lived a life of diversity with distinct cultures, worldviews, and languages. First Nations Inuit and Métis still do today. As customary Indigenous knowledge and culture has survived, there exists common values that echo from time immemorial, including the strong committed relationships to the land and the community. Settler culture has unfortunately disrupted Indigenous paradigms by enforcing limiting gender binary heteronormativity. Colonization has used violent ideals to impose the unnatural dissection of gender variance into only female and male roles on Indigenous people, asserting inflexible idealism and ultimately causing cultural rupture within Indigenous traditional ways of being. Upon contact, Europeans imposed dominant notions of patriarchy and heteronormativity by forcing unrealistic psychological and sexual expectations on Indigenous peoples and the social roles of the male and female. Destructive modes of assimilation intended to destroy cultural identity and to reprogram Indigenous peoples to the norms aligned with Western ways of being included mechanisms such as the residential school system and policies like the Indian Act. Heteropatriarchy aims to disempower and devalue spirit people who once held high honor in their community, thereby dangerously pushing them further into the margin. The impacts of colonization continue as settler agendas challenge notions of the civil, sexual, and political sovereignty of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. The violence against Indigenous people is unfortunately demonstrated multiple tiers of continued genocide over the last 500 years. There is so much to be collectively gained by Indigenous peoples' knowledge, language, and paradigms in relationship to the land, oneself, others, the environment, and how we function as diverse people with complex identity. As an identity that meets many intersections, Two-Spirit peoples, unfortunately, face a unique and particularly violent discrimination. There is a lot of work that has to be done. Higher rates of homelessness, poverty, and a lack of access to culturally appropriate healthcare services are only some of the barriers faced by Two-Spirit people. Through reconciliation and reclamation, Two-Spirit people are using their voice to live authentically in Canada by confronting the impacts of colonization. It is time, as settlers, to change behaviors, challenge discrimination, and become allies who are welcome to the diverse perspectives and insights of First Nations, Inuit, Métis people, including Two-Spirit people.
Pretty heavy video, right? Big, but I think it's super important. Frig off. All right, cool, great. Okay, yeah, so that is a little bit more about Two-Spirit people, and a lot better than I can say it. Again, I'm not a Two-Spirit person, I'm not Indigenous, I can't really speak to that, but I'm very glad that I can find a video like that that actually can. So basically just move on basically right in order. So the 2SLGBTQI, gonna go right in order. So L, lesbian. A lot of people have heard of this. I'm sure pretty much everybody has heard of this. So it's a woman who is emotional, romantically, physically attracted to other women. So women who love women. Gay or gay women, sometimes they'll say. They might identify themselves as a butch or a femme. They might not. They might have both. It's kind of up to them. basically the whole idea of being a lesbian is a woman who's really into other women. That's about all that you really need to know, unless you are, and that's like on a 101 level, is that's it. It's pretty simple. And gay, conversely, usually, when you think about it, you're going to think about guys who like guys, men who love men, right? But usually, a lot of people will use it. They'll say, I'm gay. Like, I'll say that all the time. I'm guilty of that all the time. I'll say, I'm gay. I'm not a man who likes men, right? I'll just say that I'm gay because it's easier for people to understand. It's like, well, you're not straight, so you're gay. So, like, just let's keep it simple. It's really not that simple. And I personally don't think it's really very accurate for me to say that I'm gay. I think it's more accurate for me to say that I'm queer, which is what we'll talk about very shortly. So, again, generally gay is going to be like a gay man who likes men. So we go to the B, and I include a P, which is not really usually in any acronym that you'll see. Some of them, in my world, they are almost one and the same. They're too alike for me to really want to separate, but people seem to like to want to, so that's fine. I have some issues with it. But essentially, so bisexual means two. So a lot of people would often generally say, oh, that means men and women. So you're into men and women, so you're bisexual, right? But that doesn't account for what about all the people who don't identify themselves as a man or a woman, or who are both, or who are not, like whatever, right? So what about that? So partly in response to that, people created pansexual, because pan, the prefix pan means all. So they say, well, I don't care what parts you have. I don't care what you identify as. I'm into everyone, so I'm pansexual. So there's a little bit of an argument or disagreement between pansexual and bisexual and what's more inclusive. And realistically, the way that I'll look at it and the way I'd like people to look at it is two doesn't just mean two genders or two sexes, men and women. It means two choices. You have people who are like you or people who are not like you. So if you're into, let's say that you identify yourself as a man, you're into people like you, so other men or masculine people. But you're also into, let's say, not people who aren't like you, so anyone who's not masculine, so anyone who's maybe more feminine or androgynous. Well, guess what? You can be bi. That's totally what it means. You can also say you're pan if that's more comfortable for you. That's fine too. But saying pan is more inclusive, that's where we have a bit of an issue. At the end of the day, that's why I really say bisexual and pansexual are kind of the same thing. So, because it's usually just used to describe people who are attracted to people who are like them, who are not like them, or attracted to anything. Just, I like sexy things, and a lot of things are sexy, so I'm bi. Ooh, hooray. So now we go to the T, my favorite. And that's transgender. So transgender, it's an umbrella term. It describes someone whose gender identity doesn't match their assignment. So another prefix for you, trans, means across from or opposite. So transgender means your gender is opposite from the one that you were assigned at birth. So in my case, assigned male, but I don't identify that way. I identify as female or a woman. So I am transgender because my gender now, my identity, does not match what someone told me it was like 32 years ago. So transgender includes binary trans people. So people like me who kind of transition from being assigned male to feeling like female, but it also includes people who are non-binary. So people like
Me.
Pretzel Jack,
Hi.
who are non-binary, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, about what the difference between binary and non-binary is for trans people, but it includes all of us. So it's the opposite of cisgender. So cisgender is a term that I'm sure many people have heard, and I often run across where people have heard of it and they have no idea what the hell it means. Yeah, no, I don't know what a cisgender is. Like, okay, so cisgender means that you're not trans. So cis, that prefix means on the same side as. So if you were born and someone said, usually the doctor will say it's a boy, and you now say, yeah, it's a boy, then guess what? You're a cisgender. Same thing. If you were born and the doctor said it's a girl, and now you say, yeah, it's a girl, you are cisgender. It's not a slur. It's not a mean thing to say. It's just you are. You either are cis or you are trans. There's no in between there. That's one of the only places where you don't have any kind of flex or say. You are trans or you are cis, and that's kind of it. A quick little fact, Ontario is a province that I'm from in Canada, and in Ontario, this stat actually comes from a survey that was done a little while back, and a new one was just done this year, or actually not last year, I guess technically. So new stats aren't out yet, I think, but at that point that they did it, 59% of trans people in Ontario said that they knew that their gender identity didn't match their body before the age of 10 years old. I fall into that category, and 80% of them, so I'd fall into this as obviously as well too, 80% of us, we knew that by 14, there's something wasn't right here, right? Something in our head didn't match our body. We weren't playing this. So the Q is queer, and some people will cringe with, and some people will kind of do that snicker that you would do when your teacher back in the day would say penis, and you'd be like, penis, right? It was great. It's great. It's awesome. No, so queer generally has a few different meanings. You'll notice in the picture here, it says queer isn't just a catch-all term. Queer is an intentional, inclusive, radical identifier, and it sums it up really nicely, actually, because it is a bit of a catch-all term, but it's not just, right? Many people will use it that way. Many people will say that it's just easier to say that I'm queer as opposed to describing all of the things I'm into or the people I'm into or whatever. Because most people who ask, like, oh, what are you? They're usually not in the community. They're usually just kind of being a jerk when they ask you that. So we'll just say, yes, I'm queer. And the beauty of that is when you say, yeah, I'm queer, I'm a queer person. Other people who identify the same way, they just kind of know. They just get it. They know what you're talking about. Like, all right, cool. Like you're a cool person to me. I get it. So one thing that we always have to talk about when we talk about this word is that it was and still is and can be extremely derogatory, extremely offensive. It is as you will see, a reclaimed slur. So there are people, generally younger people, who really do identify with this term, and they find that it is, like I say, more inclusive, more intentional and radical, and they really like it. They're all about it. They're all about it. But there are people who maybe only 10 years older than me, they would have heard this while they're walking outside on the street being yelled at them from car windows while people were throwing their drinks at them and other such nasty acts. So these are people who would certainly never identify themselves this way, but maybe if they were maybe 10 years younger, probably would. So it's a very contentious term. If you're not identifying yourself in the community, you cannot use this word. Do not talk about it that way unless you're doing some sort of academic paper maybe and talking about like queer artists. Even then, when you're on Buddytown, if you use this word, you better be careful. I'll put it that way. And especially in your actual day-to-day life. So then we move on to the intersex. So that's I. What's the I? I has intersex. So what the hell is intersex? When I say generally what the term that people would have heard before would have been hermaphrodite. Don't say that term anymore. That's really outdated and gross. But that's what this essentially is. So intersex is a sex assignment. So when you're born, generally the doctor will look at you and say, okay, well, there's a penis there, so that's a boy. Thank you. Right? Same thing with a girl. There's a vagina, so that's a girl. Bye. Awesome. Great. So what happens sometimes when they look and they go, it's I don't know. Well, that's going to be a more pronounced condition of a type of intersex condition. a lot of them are not as pronounced. A lot of people will be assigned as male or female, but in reality, they're intersex. There's a lot of different intersex conditions. Not every single one of them is the same. And like I say, it's a sex assignment. It's not a gender identity. Like you can't just identify yourself as intersex. You are assigned intersex. So in the same fashion that I was assigned male, I could have been assigned intersex if it was noticed in me that I had any one of these conditions that we'll talk about. So intersex people can identify themselves as being trans, but they can't. Just because you're intersex doesn't mean that you're trans as well. Because there are people who are intersex and they're not trans whatsoever. They're not transitioning. They just are who they are. And that's fine too. Oh, I kept this in. That's great. Okay, we're going to play a little game. I don't know how we're going to even do any tallies or whatever.
People just have people yell stuff out.
Yell it out. You have to yell it out.
And keep.
Should I call on people? I'm going to call on people. Oh, I'll do this in a row. In a row.
Oh, you're going to call people?
Okay, let's see this. Let's call out
Can you
people.
even see who they are?
Who's even here?
Let's see who's here.
You can pick. Pick people. Pick people. Smack them for me, and you have to answer.
Andrew, this meme guy, Cliff.
Okay, pick someone for me. You're my helper.
Okay, so I choose. Actually, Bamboo. Bamboo, you're here. I choose Bamboo.
Okay, Bam Bam. Transgender people are modern.
True or false?
Bam Boom. You gotta unmute yourself or type or something.
Yeah, it might be muted, Bamboo.
Hang on,
Yeah,
having
okay.
unmuted. Oh, that's okay.
You can type.
You can
Just type true or false.
Yeah, true or false, my dude.
Two flashes for yes.
And yeah, there might be people who have questions after we get through the true or false. I'm not sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Ask questions at any time.
The question is this is all a true or false slide?
Yes.
So the slide says transgender people are a modern phenomenon. As in, like, there were no ancient transgender people ever. True or false? If you don't want to answer, it's okay. I can. Does anyone want to answer? Answer if you want to.
I would say
Oh!
it is false that it
False.
is a modern phenomenon.
Okay, pretty much everyone. It's like a resounding
It
false.
is false. You're right. Look at that. Everyone's right.
Yeah, everyone's so right. Good job. Okay, everyone just yell stuff out if you want to.
Yeah, you can
Okay,
also
yeah,
type in chat too.
My lovely assistant here is enjoying the true or false section. So
Yeah, Andrew, I like it.
go ahead.
Okay, so true or false? A person can come out many times in their life.
True.
True.
True. Oh, Vlad says true. That's true. Yep, you're right.
True.
True. Yep. Memlord. Jazz, you're all right. Okay, next one. True or false? A cross-dresser is another word for a transgender person.
False.
False.
False. Okay. Oh, look at everyone. Everyone's so smart tonight. Next one is being 2SLGBTQI is not a mental illness. True or
True.
false? True. Big if true.
It was only like one person said true. A lot of people.
And
Was the wording saying not?
There's typing. Vlad typed
there was a
it.
double negative there.
Oh, I love it. I know, right? The double negative screws people
Yeah.
up.
The next one. People choose to be 2SLGBTQI. True or false? False.
False.
Huh. False. Oh, you think that it's true that people choose to be
Okay.
2SLGBTQI?
Yeah, in my opinion, yes.
Okay. Why do you think that?
Well, my friend
is in the guys, and it's false.
But you can tell it, but I really would like to know why.
Yeah, let's talk.
He just chose to like guys.
Did he choose to tell you? Did he choose to express his feelings? Or did he actually just choose to be like, you know what? I think I want to like guys right now.
Yeah, he's just like.
He just woke up one day and he was like, you know what? That's just kind of what I like.
Yep.
I feel
sorry.
like it may be from your perspective that's what it's like.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you have to try to think about how long was this person thinking about this in their own head? How long have they felt this way? Because they could have felt this way for a very long time. And it's you choose to be like gay or trans or straight or whatever just as much as you choose to be like black or white or, you know, from fucking Sweden or from Argentina. Like you get to choose all of that just as much as you get to choose being gay or straight. That is to say, it's kind of just, you know, oh shit.
He might have been testing the waters, talking to you to see how you would accept it, but I guarantee you he had been thinking about telling you probably for a very long time. Because it's a personal kind of a thing, and especially to come out to a friend, it's really hard the first time.
Mm-hmm. Because you never know, you might lose your friends, you might lose everything if you come out to people. So that's something to think about, is when someone comes out to you like that, it's they're taking a huge leap of faith. They know what's at stake.
And just one other thought too, from personal experience, there are people that I know who choose to explore their sexuality, but in the end, who they are is who they are to themselves and what is their own personal truth. And so that's not always an easy path to walk, especially when you may have been brought up in a certain type of environment with certain expectations and never really had a safe place to even think about your gender or your identity.
Oh yeah, it's true. It's very true. So that's why we want to support people and let them just kind of work it out, because we don't get it. So next question.
Right. Same sex and same gender couples always have a man and a woman role in the relationship. True or false?
So right, so like let's say there's two gay men who are together, like there's a man and a woman, right? Like that's that true or is that false?
Cookie and Vlad say false.
It's false.
Oh, false. More falses. I see it. Yeah. That's you're right, guys.
It's a pretty resounding false. Like you would now, some people might think that these questions are really easy and very like, come on, are you serious? But believe me, I have had people. This one is a great one in particular. That people would say, "Oh no, that's totally true, 100%." Yeah. And then when they see false, they're like, "What? What do you mean?" And it's you never really know, right? So. Next question. Some transgender people will never transition. Is that true or is that false?
That is true.
Oh, Cookie says true.
Yeah, that's true.
True. Yep. That's right, guys. It's true.
Very true. Some will not. For many reasons too, right?
And there's nothing wrong with not.
Yeah, totally. So I will take this opportunity before we continue. This is the next area we're going to explore, is the sex versus gender versus your sexual orientation, which people seem to kind of mix up a lot, to kind of debrief and talk about any questions that we had from that basic kind of how all these letters mean.
Vlad has a question.
Okay.
So Vlad's question.
Yes, Vlad, correct. That's what that is. Klinefelter syndrome is a form of intersex. XXY, right? Yeah, it's atypical chromosome, right? So if you typically have a female who is XX and the male who is XY, that's your typical man on woman sexual assignment. But like Vlad said, there are people who have like XXY. So What the hell is that? You're not a man, you're not a woman. What the hell are you? You are intersex, right? But how many forums do we see in day-to-day life, especially in government forums where it's sex, MF? And you're like, well, technically not either of them. So what do you write? What do you do? Right?
Yeah, intersex is more common, or is as common as red hair.
Yep.
So if you think of, it's not like everyone with red hair has intersex, but like if you think of the amount of people that you have that have red hair, that is the kind of amount of people that potentially have that are intersex, but maybe even don't even know about it because their genitalia might just kind of look quote unquote the same as like.
Well, there are intersex conditions. Let's say that the gonads, so ovarian tissue, would have some ovaries would have ovarian tissue and testicular tissue a little bit in there, and it's kind of a mix of both. Just and it's not normal, so it's not typical. They would say so. It's atypical, so that would be technically defined as an intersex state or an intersex condition because it's not exactly kind of really male, really female. It's like a bit of both in that regard. But maybe the rest of the organs are all typically female. So they would say, okay, it's a girl, assigned female, done. But technically intersex.
Anyone else have a question or anything before we keep going?
Yeah, totally. The intersex one usually gets people really, and especially that whole. It's like I think it's when you get to it, it's about 1% or something, or I'm somewhere between 1% and 2% of the population who has like red hair. So imagine that many people who are intersex, and how many of those people don't even know that they're intersex. They're just like, yeah, I'm a man or I'm a woman. So something to think about. It's interesting. So I think we can continue on, and we can talk about sex, gender, and sexual orientation. So we like to think about this question first. I'm going to ask for men and for women. So with women, what makes a female body female? Like what makes a person a woman? What defines their womanhood? If you think of a woman, how do you describe this person? What words do you use? What do they do with their life? How do they feel? How do they act? Like, who are they? Right?
Just like yell it out or type it, whatever. When you think of a woman or vagina, yes, correct. You think of vagina. You're right.
Right. Okay. So that's usually the first question.
Thread killer.
Boobies. So that's absolutely what usually people think about in women. Some people like to think about things like, you almost always get that women are in the kitchen. Women make sandwiches, like that kind of silliness, right?
That's a curve.
The curves, yeah. Oh, that's a woman.
Maybe
right? The
you
curves.
think of like a mom, being a mom.
Think about like motherly instincts and the way that they act. That women are more doting and caring, and loving, and that motherly, right? More emotional, aren't they? Like women are pretty emotional. Wasn't gonna mention the kitchen, says Foamy. You can go on the mic. I encourage coming on the mic.
I wasn't gonna. It was the first thing that came to mind as one of those bad. What's the difference between a man and a woman?
Yeah, but it's very valid. It's a real thing, right? Like that's 100% you think of, isn't it?
And there are certain words and expressions that generally you assign a certain physical gender to when you hear them. If you hear the word grace, that usually lends itself to more of a feminine expression. You generally don't think of masculine men as being personified as grace.
Yeah.
Also, there's a whole hormonal thing, because where I'm sitting here trying to figure it, it's an estrogenic kind of thing almost.
It's valid, yeah. Women are.
And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's just a straight, this is how stuff goes,
And like, what kind of things do you think define womanhood? Like, being a mom, or
if you listen to the ads on TV, or in my case, if I were to listen to the Facebook targeted ads at me, being a woman is all about having a period and a vagina and doing something about that period. Which
Your
is
skin
a
isn't
super.
right, and your hair is never right, and your body's never right, and
make sure you get makeup on, because otherwise
Otherwise, you're disgusting.
you're disgusting.
And
Oh,
by
wow.
God, whenever you do, don't ever get old.
No, never get
wrinkles.
old.
Goddamn.
Right.
And the whole motherhood and taking care of your kids and your family.
Exactly.
There you go. Right. All very valid. All.
You almost never hear
True to an
someone
extent.
refer to a biological clock to any other gender.
Yes, that's very
Mhm.
true. Your clock's ticking. When are you gonna have kids?
Okay, so good answers. Now let's think about it on the flip side. What about men? What makes a male a male? What is manhood? Makes a person a man? Like, and I would like to put forward about someone was talking about estrogen. I guess what's that, Jazz?
Nope, that wasn't me.
No,
That was me. That was me.
Boom.
And I would straight up say, yeah, it has a lot to do with the role of testosterone and things.
Right.
Absolutely.
Angry and fucking.
Well, I'm not even going
right.
to say this isn't a question of anger. It's a question of these are two hormones that make you operate differently.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing. It's just a physiological thing.
Yeah. From an endocrinic standpoint, it's sort of whichever way your body's balance tips on these two different hormones generally has a strong expression on how you present as far
Yep.
as man or woman.
Sure, and it changes
Oh,
based
absolutely.
on other stuff. It's not a question of this is how it is, this is how it isn't. There's this weird balance that goes on. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
There's absolutely massive impact of. So though that would be your actual assigned sex. That's your sex characteristics, right? Secondary sex characteristics caused by hormones, right? So definitely that is something that makes a male body a male or a female body female, right? For sure.
Well, if we're talking developmental, yeah, what's in
Yep.
dominance 100% makes a difference.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah. But would you say that is something that defines manhood, or is that just something that makes the body male?
I thought we were talking physiologically.
We're talking in every way you can think about.
Yeah, like
Okay,
what makes
because manliness and femininity.
Yes.
And how the stuff expresses itself as things grow and mature and whatnot. That's two different things, in my opinion.
You're absolutely correct, which is what we're going to talk about. That's the difference between sex and gender identity and gender role and the gender binary. All of these things, they're all different. So you're absolutely correct.
Even just the term manliness.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. Manliness, manhood, womanhood, those are societal constructs more so than anything biological.
I absolutely are. And that is the purpose of these questions, to make you think about these things for those of us who maybe haven't really thought about these kinds of things in that manner, in that context, and understanding that oftentimes the answers to these questions that you get from the general common audience is going to be a mixture of things that are societal roles, things that are just caused by hormones, so sex assignment things, right? Hashtag just sex assignment things. Those kinds of things, as opposed to things that we have decided collectively as humans, as a society, that men do this and women do. So usually the answers are a bit of a mix. And that would lead me into talking about your human sexual identity and how we actually have to think about ourselves and relate to ourselves and other people as like sexual creatures, as sexual beings of some sort, right? And there are 4 main characteristics that shape that identity for us. And the first one is your sexual orientation. You also have your sex assignment, your gender identity, and I pressed the wrong button. I don't know. Frig, I did. There we go. And your gender expression. I think I pressed B instead. Yeah, I did. Oh, why would anyone want that? Anyways, hit you with a lot of information here. Now we're getting them in a little bit more deeper than 101. So we'll talk about each of those 4 things. The first one we'll talk about is your sexual orientation. I really like this picture. I love Venn diagrams. They're just pretty colors and stuff, but it's a good way to think about your sexual orientation. So you have your identity, which is how you label it. So are you gay? Are you straight? Are you bi? Are you pan? Are you like, what are you, right? Your sexual attraction, like who you actually look at and would be like, yeah, I want that. And then your behavior, which is what you actually do sexually with others. Because you could look at someone and be like, yeah, I want that. You could never do anything about it. And then therefore never identify yourself as maybe bi or gay. But maybe you could have a sexual attraction to men and you have behavior that you're totally into men and you actually have sex with men. So you identify yourself as gay or bi, right? So those are kind of the dimensions of just your sexual orientation and how complex that can be. There can be people who, like, there are men who have sex with men. They identify themselves as straight. That's why you'll hear that term, men who have sex with men. They don't necessarily want to be called gay men because they don't identify themselves as gay. Maybe they're bi or maybe they think that they're straight. This is how they want to express themselves, right? So how they label straight. Attraction, they definitely are into men and women. Maybe just men, whatever. Behavior, well, they are with men. So, that's how they're going to do it. That's their dimensions. That's how they identify their sexual orientation. So the next thing we have to think about is the biological sex, or as we like to say now, the assigned sex, is what the doctor assigned you. So this comes back a lot to what we were just talking about with the intersex, and it's actually determined by 5 factors. So those factors are the number and type of the sex chromosomes that you have, the type of gonads, that is the testes and ovaries. So the gonads are where the actual reproductive cells are created, right? So the egg and the sperm, or the part that's super important in the function and all that fun stuff. The sex hormones, right? Your estrogen, testosterone, and whatnot. Your internal and then your external reproductive anatomy and genitalia. So you're definitely intersex if any of those 5 are really atypical. And so those are really, actually, I'll keep it up back for a second. So that's really kind of a broad thing to think about. So that's why we say intersex is a lot more common than you might think. And just to bring it back to that little discussion we were having earlier about that, where look at all of these things, there's a lot of variance there that can happen, right? There are women who you would think that's a woman, right? But their sex hormones might be more kind of close to what you'd consider to be a male. But they're still a woman because all the rest of that stuff is woman, right? Their chromosomes are fine. They have ovaries. There's vagina and uterus and cervix and all the good stuff, right? Great, woman. It's just that they have, some sort of hormone problem. They're not intersex. Still a woman, fine, right? That's usually how you're going to look at it. But there are conditions like that all the time, and the point is, it's kind of complicated. Any more questions about that kind of stuff? Anyone have any insights, anything about that we want to talk about? On to the next one. Okay, no flashing lights. Let's go. Okay, so we've got your gender identity and your gender expression. So that is totally different from your sex assignment. I really like this ad campaign. It's actually from Toronto, apparently. My gender lives here, not here. So it lives in your head. It doesn't live between your legs. It's not where your gender is, as we're about to find out. So what is your gender identity, right? Your gender is broken into your gender identity, your gender expression. Usually when people ask you what your gender is, they're asking you what your gender identity is. So your gender identity is something that's innate to you. That's something that may or may not correspond to how you were assigned at birth. That's why I'm transgender. So it can't be observed or measured. It's just up to the person. You don't get to decide as an outsider how this person feels, how their gender identity, what it is. It's up to them. they cannot, if they can't tell you because they don't have the vocabulary, it doesn't mean that they're not. It just means that they're not able to tell you, right? And it exists on a spectrum with way more than two choices. It's not just I'm a man, I'm a woman, and that's the end of that. And that's there's no way. As you can see, even with sex, where you would think it would be super basics, just men and women, right? Penis, vagina, whatever. Nope. Intersex screwed all that up for you. So, sex, the most basic thing that you think is just men and women, it's already screwed up for you. So, gender, you're done now. There's way more than those three. So, your gender expression, what is that? What is that? Your gender expression is actually essentially basically everything about your gender identity that you externally manifest. So your clothing and your jewelry, if you wear that, right? The way you move, the way you talk, kind of the way that you handle yourself, all of that kind of thing, right? That's your gender expression. That's how you express your gender.
Good question.
Okay, what's up?
Cookie says, are those the same people?
Yeah, I was going to totally tell you that. These sets of people are the same people. And in one set, one person is wearing masculine clothing, and then the next set, they're wearing feminine clothing. And that's kind of the idea, right? Is that look and you go, holy shit, oh my God. It's a series. The artist's name, if anyone wants to Google it, is J.J. Levine. So J, like two-letter J's, and then Levine. And so they actually had a whole photo series of a whole bunch of different people. I just happened to use this one because it fit really nicely in the PowerPoint slide, right? And the size of it was excellent. So anyways, a whole bunch of them, they all look like that. Same idea, two sets of the same people, right? And they just flip their clothing. And the point is to show you that, look, like, does it really matter? Like, if you're looking that hard to figure out which one of these people has a penis, like, take a second look at yourself and be like, why? What's the point? Why am I looking that hard? Why does it matter, right? So it's really cool. I really like this. So your identity and your expression, a good thing to think about is it's because they're not exactly the same thing. Sometimes people can have an identity that doesn't match the expression. These are people who necessarily might not be out, right? These are people who, let's say it's a trans woman who's not out, they might have a beard. There might be a person who has a beard and they dress very masculinely. They don't do any voice training. They're just, hey man, what's up? How you doing, dude? Right? Like maybe that's how they're living their life. But inside they know that they are a woman. They feel this way. But their gender expression is masculine, manly, right? Doesn't mean that they're not trans. Just means that they haven't said or done anything about it necessarily. At least that anyone sees or anyone knows, right? So it's very important to understand that as well, that your expression is not just your identity. And there are people who identify in the non-binary spectrum, that whole spectrum of identities of people who aren't just male or female, who express themselves differently, sometimes like every day. Maybe one more masculine, more feminine, more androgynous, like whatever happens, right? And just because someone's wearing a skirt or wearing pants or a suit or whatever doesn't necessarily define anything that's going on in their own head, right? That's up for them to decide.
Also sneezing.
Bless you. Most bless you. Oh my goodness. Okay, so with all that in mind, that we can talk a little bit more deeply about transgender people, because you kind of need to understand what the hell your gender is, your gender identity, your gender expression, all of that, before you can understand what it actually means to be transgender. Because transgender people like myself, we think about our gender a lot more than maybe people who are cisgender ever have or will in their entire life, outside of maybe like little workshops like this. So I touched on it a little bit earlier, but we've got a couple of kinds of trans people that exist out here. Oh my God, what did I do? I'm so bad at this. So I'm good at talking. I'm not good at pressing buttons. Jeez. So binary trans people are people, myself, whose gender identity falls within the male or female gender binary, which we're going to talk a little bit more about the gender binary later. So essentially, it doesn't align with the assigned gender. So when I was born, like I said, it's a boy, and in my brain, I'm going, no, it's not. It's a girl. It's a girl, honey. Like, you just don't know that. I didn't know. But I figured it out, obviously. So here we are today. Many of us will undergo surgery to align our bodies with the gender identity, but many of us will not, and that's okay too. It doesn't make us any more or less trans, or less of a woman or a man. It just means that we haven't had surgery, and that's totally fine. And it's totally fine also because cis people who are not trans get cosmetic surgery all the damn time. Like, let's talk for 2 seconds about women who get boob jobs or Botox or butt lifts or whatever the heck else is happening in life right now. There are people who do this. It has nothing to do with their being trans or not, and it does actually have a lot to do with their gender identity and gender expression, because often it's expressions of femininity. Like I just said, boob jobs, lip jobs, butt lifts. It's totally a gender thing. But people will look at trans people getting these kinds of surgeries to express their gender as some sort of strange, freakish thing, when cis people do it all the time anyways. And they'll go, oh yeah, you got a boob job? Oh, that's hot. That's great. Awesome. Hell yeah. Right? Come on. So on the other side of the binary, there is non-binary. So again, you're either binary or you're non-binary trans, right? And at this point, we're going to get Slime to talk about this, because Slime is an actual real-life non-binary person. And I would like them to talk about it a little bit.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, non-binary trans people. Basically, non-binary is like an umbrella term. So a person can identify as non-binary, such as they can be like I am non-binary. But it can also be a umbrella term for other non-binary identities. Like at the bottom, you see agender, gender fluid, non-binary, gender queer. There are many non-binary identities. Basically, if you think of the gender binary, it is the binary between male and female. So the idea of non-binary is you're somewhere in between. You're totally off the spectrum. It is totally outside of that typical male versus female binary. Therefore, you're non-binary. Many non-binary people will transition. Many non-binary people will not transition. It is up to the person themselves. Some non-binary people will use like gendered or binary pronouns, or even pet names or words, such as like, I don't mind being called certain gendered words. I'm AFAB, assigned female at birth, and I don't mind being called like auntie by my nieces and nephews. But that's specific to me. Not all non-binary people will want to be called gendered pronouns, period, or specifically the gendered pronouns or words that go towards their assigned gender or assigned sex at birth. Sorry. So that is up to the non-binary person themselves, and I would say the best thing to do if you're not sure would be to actually ask the person themselves. Would be to actually say, hey, what kind of terms would you use for yourself? Like, my partner's sister had a baby, and she actually came to me and said, what kind of terms would you like to use so I can teach my daughter to use those terms? And I personally was okay with auntie, so I'm Auntie Slime, which is great. But again, that's non-binary, so I don't know if anyone has any questions, because non-binary is kind of a catch-all. It is very different for each thing, such as like agender. Someone with is agender does not inscribe to any gender, so they feel completely outside of the gender. Someone that is gender fluid, such as myself, there are days I wake up and I feel way more masculine than other days that I wake up and I feel way girly, and I just want to be like head pat and told I'm a good girl, and that's all. But other days I'm like, fuck that, I'm a big strong man, get away from me. And then people like gender queer could be similar, non-binary. So I don't know if there's any questions about non-binary. It can be kind of confusing. It can be, in my opinion, probably the most confusing or the most misunderstood identity, other than like maybe intersex or other things like that.
I got a question for you.
Okay.
When you reference trans in relation to non-binary, are you talking about people who are realizing they're non-binary or changing their view of whether they are agender or gender fluid? What do you mean when you use that term with non-binary?
Oh, so like if you think the idea of like if you look at like an umbrella, there's like a good graphic that I don't think is actually in this slide, but if you think of an umbrella and there's like the little stick in the middle of the umbrella, right? The umbrella is transgender, right? Then on one side of the umbrella it's binary trans, and the other side of the umbrella it's non-binary trans. So like transgender just means not cisgender. So if you're cis, you're not trans. If you're trans, you're not cis. And then trans, there's binary and non-binary. Is that answering your question?
So if you're within trans, you got to think about assigned, like you don't agree with the assignment that you were given, right? And under that, you have binary trans and non-binary trans. So you're all trans. Like a non-binary person still technically is a transgender person, because whatever their gender identity is, it doesn't sign with strictly male or female that they were assigned, right? So we're both trans. It's just how we choose to describe our transness.
And not every trans person will transition or use use hormones or anything like that. So like some binary trans people won't transition, some will, most will. And then some non-binary people will and some won't. So
right, and we'll talk about more about like what transitioning actually means. There's more aspects of transitioning than just getting a surgery and all of a sudden your genitals the way you want them and everyone's happy, hooray, and we're done. Because like I wish, but no, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. There's a lot more work to it.
I've got a follow-up question. I'll wait till after that. Thank you.
You can follow it up right now.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you might answer it when you get to that. So.
Oh,
no.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, anyone else have any other comments, questions, anything like that?
Anything about binary trans?
Oh, yeah, look in the arena chat, by the way. I can see Cliff is posting some very useful pictures here, pictographics, if you'd like to say. So you'll see the cisgender. I'm sorry, it's kind of boring, the boring little umbrella. Cis women and cis men. And so the transgender with the lovely transgender flag, which I would like to talk about really briefly. So you'll notice the transgender flag is the blue, pink, and white. So we have male or masculine identified people represented with the blue. We have pink for the feminine or female identified people. And we have white for the non-binary people identified. And under non-binary, you'll see that there actually is a non-binary flag, which is yellow and then kind of gray, black, and purple color. So that is covered in the white, but a lot of people just want their own flag because, like, hey, they want their own, this is their title, this is how they feel on too. But these graphics are actually super useful. So when we talk about umbrella terms, this is the way to kind of visualize that. Like literally an umbrella covering a whole bunch of other little terms. Sometimes it might be useful to think about it like a tree, like a family tree or something, right? Transgender and under transgender, binary, all the lips to come out of there, right? That kind of thing is also very similar, kind of good way to think about it, right? What's up, Cookie? What do we got?
What's the best play if you have to, but you don't know the pronouns and know the person well enough to ask? Is it rude to ask?
It is not rude to ask. It's definitely something that we're going to talk about and I'm going to touch on a little bit later, but I'll answer it now for sure. It's absolutely the best thing to do is to ask them. However, I think even better than that is offer yours up first. Hi, I'm Cucky. I use he, him pronouns. What are yours? Like, what are your pronouns, right? And they'll say, oh, hi, I'm blah, 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 and I use whatever pronouns, right? Offer it up first to show that you are not just doing it because, hey, this person looks a little bit like I don't know what's going on. So, because trust me, like we understand when you understand that. Like I know what the stairs look like. Right?
It could be a signal that you're a safe person to talk to.
Yes.
To be like, hi, my name is blank, and my pronouns are blank. Like, what's your name? What are your pronouns? Kind of thing.
Right.
Like you offering your pronouns or putting that kind of thing like that. That's a signal that you're a safe person, or
Right,
at least
so-
a person who's going to be respectful.
Yeah, so you don't ask like, hey, so how do you identify? Or what's your, what are you? You just say what pronouns do you use, or what are your pronouns, right? You don't say what are your preferred pronouns, because they're not preference, they're just the pronouns you use. So you say, what are your pronouns? And like we said, you can also sometimes say, here are mine, right? It's totally not rude to ask. It's rude not to ask, in my opinion, actually. If you don't ask and just assume, that's where you get actually pretty rude.
Would that be, in some ways, more of a risk of offending someone if maybe they haven't decided to come out and you're noticing something about them and suddenly, or you're just plain wrong? And
well, I
they
mean,
are,
it's like if you don't know them, right?
Well, and with
This
with
is more on like a.
offering, sorry.
No, keep going. Sorry.
Sorry,
I was
I
gonna say, because
totally interrupted you.
there were, I've had a situation where I've introduced myself that way, and just conversationally, you're sort of putting yourself out there as someone who's at least thought about this
Yeah.
and has the vocabulary to talk about it in that way, so that even if the person that you're introducing yourself to hasn't or isn't ready to or hasn't even thought about it, you're in no way projecting anything onto them. You're introducing yourself, and they can just say, hi, I'm Bob, or hi, I'm Sandy. And if they don't have a preference, or if they don't respond, you've made that, personal sharing of yourself, and they can and will choose whether they want to pick up on that, or they might just be completely confused by it, in which case, again, you've done nothing to offend them. You're just kind of opening yourself up.
Absolutely. I think it would be helpful. We can demonstrate that. We can talk about that now, and we can kind of start it off and introduce ourselves, right? I mean, I know we're kind of halfway through this. So introduce ourselves with our names and our pronouns, right? We can start with the reason why we're all here. So let's start with Cliff.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cliff, and my pronouns are he.
Okay, who's next, actually? Let me make sure. Can you go up to the list of people there, please?
Yeah.
My trusty assistant. No, we'll start back at the top. We'll go back into alphabetical order. So, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm Andrew, and I go by he, him.
I don't know if people can see that on the way. If you look on the people who are on the Discord, we're just going to go from top to bottom, if you don't mind. Or just let me know if you don't want to. That's okay, too. Type or say something. So
I'm
next is
caustic
Bamboo.
soda. Oh, sorry, Bamboo.
No, it's all good. I'm Bamboo. I go by he and him, but I also want to make sure that when I'm listening to stuff, that I'm not going to try to push on whatever I'm doing. So I don't know. But yeah, he, him.
Okay, yeah, Caustic.
I'm caustic soda. She, her.
It's Cucky.
Cookie says, "Hi, I'm Cookie. My pronouns are he, him."
Very nice, very nice. Foamy.
Yeah, I'm Foamy. I'm Dave. He, him, dude, whatever.
Alrighty, and who do we have next?
It's me.
I'm Ghost, and my pronouns are he or him.
Very nice, thank you. We have a muted person next. I don't know how to say your name.
Hassan.
Hassan Pfeffer.
Hassan Pfeffer.
Hassan P. Pfeffer?
Hassan Pfeffer. Bugs
Rabbit
Bunny
stew.
people, come on.
Rabbit stew.
Right?
If you'd like to share, please do. If not, that's okay. Just let us know.
I'll go ahead and jump in.
Okay.
Oh, great.
So I'm Jas. My pronouns are he, him, they.
Oh, very nice. Thank you.
Very nice. And Hassan Pfeffer wrote in the chat, "Hi, I'm Hass. Joe is my name. He, him."
Very nice. Thank you for sharing. And Laser. if you'd like to type or speak.
Laser typed in the arena chat and said, "Laser, he, him."
Oh, very nice. Thank you, Laser. And this is Noob Muffin.
There's no obligation to speak or to disclose. It's fine.
Before we move on from this, I don't know if that was the last person or not.
Oh, last person is almost up. This is the second to last person is Noob Muffin. We saved the best for last. That's okay.
Okay.
I believe that I was told that Noob uses she, her, and I'm going to go with that until I am corrected otherwise. But welcome, Noob, so thank you. And lastly, we have PJ.
It me, Slime. And I use they, them. Thank you.
Very great. Very nice. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. That was great. So it's very easy to, right? Like, hi, I'm Chris, she, her. I don't even have to say my pronouns are. I'll usually just say it that way. Hi, I'm Chris, she, her. And people just get it. People who get it, they get it. They get onto it. Okay, great. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Right? It makes things really easy. It's like a common shared language.
See, for me, I'm in a group where I know the people I'm talking to right here, and I know the whole nature of it, and I feel very comfortable knowing that some of the people here would like that or want that. But at the same time, I think in my day-to-day life, I don't know if I would be comfortable introducing myself like that because of whether some of the people there would have no idea what I'm saying and would then think differently of me. Not that that's a bad thing. Or maybe I'm talking to someone who I think might appreciate me saying that because I've got a vibe from them. Like, okay, I think this person would appreciate it. Maybe that person doesn't want someone to know that about them.
True.
Maybe. So I wouldn't feel comfortable just doing that, other than obviously in this place where we already know it's an open atmosphere.
Right. Well, that's kind of the idea as well. It's like we all have to be safe, and everybody kind of knows what their own best way for them to be safe is. And if you are going to be self-aware about that, which you obviously are, you've thought about that, is like maybe these people don't want me to be saying anything that would trigger anyone else to be kind of tipped off, right? To be thinking, oh, this is some gay stuff happening. This is weird. Like they'll have their little alarm going off in their head, right? Like I absolutely get what you're saying. So we all have to. It's kind of situational, and it all depends on who you're talking to, where you are, right?
Okay, so you're not suggesting necessarily trying to continue this and to change the world.
Oh no, it's just like this is one way that you can, especially in situations where it's more open or people would be receptive to this, right? Like if I know that you're in a place where you live where it's maybe not necessarily accepted so much. And that's totally that's just reality. That's the way it is, right? Like you just can't say that for your own safety, apparently sometimes, which is very unfortunate, but it's true.
Okay, thank you. I understand your question. No, thank you.
Okay, great, awesome. And so, Laser, you had a question about. You're wondering why is cisgender always represented with gray flags? So cisgender and often straight people are represented with gray flags. I think it's just kind of funny. I think it's supposed to be a big joke to show look, we have all the rainbow, you've got everything else. Let us have all the colors. You guys just get the gray board. It's kind of a joke. It's monotonous, right? That's kind of honestly my answer. I don't know if anyone else want to pitch in on that one, but that's kind of where I see it as.
It's very anti-fabulous.
Right? Anti-fabulous, right? That is so not just, it doesn't work.
Yeah. And someone, I think it was last week, said that it might have been Caustic, that they were wearing the gayest outfit possible.
Caustic has a lot of really gay outfits.
And I've
so
misread it
absolutely.
as gray.
No,
like,
she has
got the-
nothing gray.
Yeah, and I'm like, is that a
Only
good
gay.
thing? Is that a good thing? That you're wearing the grayest outfit? And I completely was like, the answer was yes, it's the best thing. I'm wearing the gayest outfit. I'm like, oh, okay, yes, okay, good. I'm not homophobic. I'm blandophobic. Yeah. Okay, good.
I'm just boring. That's all.
It's okay. We got you, fams.
Cool.
So I would like to quickly touch on the gender binary, which is a term you've heard me say a bunch of times so far tonight, and that is the idea or the concept that there are only two genders. And as you can see, I like this little picture. Gender is less like this with like the male and the female bathroom symbols, and more like this with all that shit in between. So we always say that the gender binary, like we touched on earlier with Jazz and Bamboo, and we had a good discussion there about the gender binary is a social construct, and that means that it's a human-made concept. Like we made that shit up, right? We made up that we only have male and female as genders, because gender is not the same as sex. You can be assigned male, but your gender is female. That's me. So my gender is made up the way that I think about it, the way that certain things that I value as innately female or what makes a woman in other cultures and other times of history, that might not be the same. They might not line up. So how do we account for that? That's just the way that societies have been. And that just means that we kind of make this shit up as we go along. Like this is not a rule that we're born into, and this natural law is like women do this, men do this. No, this is just what people say that men do and women do, right? In some cultures, there is no gender binary. This is where we talk about two-spirit people. They have there's no such thing as a gender binary. Their gender is much more of a spectrum. They have different names and roles and things to call themselves and each other, as opposed to just like man, woman, gay, straight. There's so much. It's much richer. And this concept of just gender binary of only being men, women is closely linked to gender essentialism. Men do this, women do that, right?
I don't know how far through my life or adulthood I even came to realize that gender and sex were not the same thing. I don't know if that's something because you live in a different country than I do, but for the longest time, it was just, yes, you're asking the same question. Like if you're filling out a form and it says gender, or you're filling out a form and it said sex, they meant the same exact thing. And it's only until, I don't know what recently would count as, but recently that I've even known to consider them two different things.
Absolutely. And like Meme Lord, yeah, was it Meme Lord said? Gender is a social construct, which is absolutely true. So, like, social construct, what is a social construct? Well, okay, like currency is a social construct. Like, nations and borders is a social construct. Like, the world exists. Borders are because we said, okay, well, you can't cross here because this is my land. I live here. This is my country. You're not allowed. And over there is yours. But this imaginary line says that's what's going on, right? We made that shit up too. Us humans, we made that up. And how many times have countries changed over your lifetime? How many different countries have come and gone, and borders have changed and gone back to the way they were and then changed again, right? It happens all the time. It's a social construct. We've created these kinds of ideas in our heads about this is the way that things are naturally, but realistically, no, it's not. So gender is one of those things. The idea of what is a man and what is a woman, it varies. Again, time, place, history, everything. It's very different depending on where you are and who you are. So I just like this picture. I just like this quote, right? So do you want to read this, Slime?
Male or female. I am non-binary. The gender binary cannot describe me. I may be both, another, all, none, or beyond. Male or female are two aspects of humanity. When 2% of children are born intersex and the binary won't fit the biological body diversity, how could it ever fit the diversity of gender? Please refer to me by gender-neutral pronouns they, them, and their, or use my name.
Yeah, I like that. It sums it up pretty nice. And like I just was talking about gender, I think this comic sums it up really nicely. If you just want to kind of read that one to yourselves here, or I can read it. Foamy, do you want to read it for me? Can you be my guest speaker?
Gender essentialism. You need to hide your genitals, but only wear clothes that represent those genitals. Whenever people see your clothes, they should really be thinking about your genitals. Scene.
That's like what it is, though.
Oh no. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Sorry, I missed the oh no.
Oh no.
Too busy looking at their genitals.
That's to me a really great description or depiction of gender essentialism. So when we talk about gender, we're talking about that there's this concept that there are this natural, innate, immutable qualities to women and men. So people will generally say that they are a variety of qualities. They are biological and psychological and physiological, and they're very, very complicated. It's a whole lot of things and it changes. Everybody has a different opinion usually too, right? So that makes it so accurate and scientific. This theory, like you can see on the screen, it is criticized by the social construction of gender that we just talked about, which is the concept that gender is a social construct. So how can it have these innate qualities if we just kind of made this shit up? It has the qualities that we say it has. Like, kind of like language, we made that shit up too. So it has the qualities that we say it has. We describe things. We define these things as we need to, as we see fit, as society changes, as people understand themselves in new ways. We need to also understand that the way that we think about it and the way that we describe things also has to change and evolve, because that's just the way it is. We can't, like, change doesn't have to be good or bad. Change just is. It's inevitable. It happens. So we'll kind of wrap it back a little bit around to what transitioning actually is. When we talk about transitioning, it's so much more than just, like I said, getting a surgery. It's actually the process that someone takes to align their expression or their assigned sex with their identity. So like we talked about a lot is that some of us will never transition, some of us will. You don't have to transition to be trans. All that you need to be trans is some sort of disconnect between what you were assigned and what you feel like. If you feel like that doesn't match, surprise, you're trans. So your transition is not going to be just kind of like snap your fingers, take a couple of pills, and all of a sudden you're a beautiful woman. You have to take a lot of pills over years. And even then, for some people, it unfortunately doesn't have the same effects that they were hoping for. And for some women, they just get really lucky, and I hate them. So transitions are complex and unique. Right. And we can't all be beautiful. It's fine. I'm fine. So we have also...
You're beautiful.
Yes, we can all. Wait, just yes, we can all be beautiful. Because
yes,
who's deciding what beauty? We're
You're
all beautiful.
correct, Cliff.
You are all breathtaking and valid.
You're right. Okay, correct. I take back my statement. And now I go forward with social and legal transition. So these are the parts of the things, your transition, that's not necessarily all about the pills and the procedures, right? These are things that you do that are part of your transition, like coming out. That's kind of where you start at, for the most part, for a lot of people. That's kind of what they see it as. But it also includes maybe changing your name, changing your hair, Some trans men will use binders to compress their breasts. So that is basically super tight clothes on their chest to push their breasts down to make it look like they just have a flat chest. They're super dangerous to use for long periods. You should never wear them when you sleep. They can be safe if you use them sparingly, but I wouldn't know much about that. It's the opposite of my whole idea of, right? No, I want the breasts. There's also packers, and these are for people who do not have a penis and maybe wish that they did. And so they create a phallic bulge. So there's an STP, a PNP. Those are examples of stand to pee. And you also have pack and play. So these are actual sexually functional packers that you can use if you want to have sex and simulate that. So there's also voice training, which, as you may or may not know, that I pretty much don't do. There's tucking, which I also kind of got really sick of really quickly, so I don't do that either. There's makeup, which I do a lot of, as you might see in a lot of my profile pictures. I'm really fucking good at it too. Just don't do the rest of that stuff. Not my style. There's also changing the gender marker on your ID, which I haven't done yet, and it's really funny because my ID has a lot of old pictures, which, good times. Well, good times when you go to the store and, they ask for that. Legal name change, which I have not done, and which is part of a transition, which I might not actually do because, again, paperwork, I don't want to do it. And reissuing your birth certificate with a modified sex marker. All of these things are a part of transition, which may or may not happen. It all depends on the person, their position, their opinion, like whatever. It's very personal and unique to every person, right? But now we can talk about the medical transition, which is what people want to talk about when they talk about trans people. And they generally also want to talk about trans women in particular, because everybody is obsessed with penis for some reason. Everybody just wants to know about someone else's penis. They want to draw penises on their notebooks when they're kids. Like, it's just a thing.
It's really weird. It's like, oh, well, you seem like a really nice person, but what's in your pants?
100%. 100%. Right. It's like, that's really great, but like, all I want to know is the penis, right? Let's talk. It's like, no, let's not. So medical transition can include, doesn't always include, but can include hormone replacement therapy, which is taking maybe testosterone or estrogen and testosterone suppressants, top surgery, quote unquote, either to enhance or remove breasts, bottom surgeries to align your genitalia with your gender. So that could include things like penile inversion, so to create a neovagina, or something like to create a neophallus, so a bottom surgery for a trans man to create a penis, right? There's also things like laser hair removal, which hurts like son of a gun, but it's super useful. Facial feminization surgery, so basically just plastic surgery, right? Which I'm staying away from because that's terrifying. Masculinizing plastic surgery, no thank you. Feminizing vocal surgery, which again, if you don't practice your voice, you're not going to go very far with that. And still, vocal surgery, like people cutting into my throat, is terrifying. So I don't think so. I will sound this way for the rest of my life. I'll never let someone cut into my throat. Goodbye. And a tracheal shave. So some trans women, fortunately, they maybe feel very poorly about the way that their neck looks, and they have a bit of a bump, and some people have more than others, and they will literally get that shaved off by a plastic surgeon or whatever. It gives me the heebie-jeebies. I don't like it. I don't like to think about it. It's terrifying. But the links that we go to alleviate the dysphoria we have, you wouldn't understand sometimes.
Does everyone know what dysphoria means?
Intimately, yeah.
Cucky does
cheating.
does not know what dysphoria
So, dysphoria generally would mean like really shitty thoughts and feelings about your gender when we're specifically applying it to gender. So, gender dysphoria, when we talk about feeling like your body or your thoughts or your being just doesn't align with how you view yourself truly or how you wish that you could feel or look. right? So, for example, for many trans women, they look down between their legs and they're like, oh yeah, that's just kind of hanging out there. That sucks. That's dysphoria. Being like, this thing shouldn't be here, but it is, and it sucks. What? I can't do anything about it. Well, I mean, there is, but there's wait lists and, expenses.
And a lot of the transition things that we just talked about, such as like binding for people who are like trans males, it is directly to relieve dysphoria. Like they will bind their chest to relieve the dysphoria of having like breasts, basically. Does that make sense? Does everyone understand dysphoria?
Yeah.
No?
Like, that's why I would do my makeup. So
You're muted.
good lord, I was not muted. But anyway, that's why
Oh, Laser had another question, Perry.
Oh, Laser, what's up? You have a question?
It says, what is gender expression? What is gender expression? You want me to tell him? Okay, so gender expression is basically how you would express your gender identity, but it doesn't have to be the same thing. Like, I'm non-binary, or more specifically, gender fluid. So some days I feel like masculine, some days I feel feminine, but most of the time my gender expression is feminine. So I will wear like a lot of makeup, or I'll wear like really feminine clothing. You can see, are you watching the live stream? You can see Queen has the gender expression thing up. So gender expression is like the movements, mannerism, clothing, jewelry. Like for me personally, I would wear like a lot of like necklaces or earrings sometimes, grooming, hair, nails. I'll paint my nails, that kind of thing. Even if I'm like feeling masculine, I prefer to do more of a feminine gender expression.
It's full. You can't watch it again. Really? It's full. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So if it's full, you can't get in.
Oh my goodness.
I could try to stream it, but I don't have the file on my computer.
Wow. Well, first of all, wow, thank you that everyone's filled this up so much. Jeez.
Yeah.
Did not expect that to happen.
Thank you, everyone. Also, there is a heli right now, so everyone would. It would be good to just take your clothing off.
Everybody get
The
naked.
heli is coming.
We are about.
Everyone,
Yep, we're.
please, everyone, please.
Are they at the
Come on,
hive?
folks.
I heard everybody. Yeah, strip your clothes down. Don't burn this place
Gonna
down.
visit us here at the arena.
You too,
Please,
Queen.
everyone, come on.
I did. I'm already.
Someone help me! I'm down.
Foamy, Andrew.
Foamy. I think Foamy might be AFK. Beach is killing.
No, I've got only two items on.
No.
I've been very.
Who is attacking? It's
Just
you,
F1 kill
Moore.
yourself. If you're being attacked, F1
Queen.
kill, and come back in a minute.
Queen? Is it Queen?
Shouldn't be.
No, she just has two things on.
Let me make sure, but I'm pretty sure that I.
If he's after you, F1
I
kill.
already, oh,
Come
okay,
back.
so Cucky hopped out. Laser, drop into the thing and look at the gender expression slide, which Queen will pull up in a second.
Oh, sorry. I
Oh
just
my
want to make
God,
sure
what's
that
the
I.
command?
So if you go.
Oh, so
to-
Laser's in now?
Yeah, Laser's looking. So
Okay,
if you
let
go
me-
to
There
gender
we go.
expression.
There we go, buddy.
So that's what gender expression is. Basically, it's how you manifest it outwardly. So if you like wear, when you're manifesting it in like a masculine kind of way.
Right. Just basically how you express the way that you. Doesn't always match, but sometimes it does. So I would the genderbread person. I like to have this kind of at the end. This is a nice summary of everything we talked about. So you can see that your identity is in your sex is generally between your legs. Your attraction, well, symbol is the heart. The symbol, holy crap, the symbol is the heart, and that's in your head too. But whatever. Your attraction, it's who you're into, right? It's who you love. and your expression, which is kind of all the whole everything together is just what you're showing off, right? However, I would like to talk about attraction. If you look on the very bottom, you'll notice that there are, first of all, every single thing is like a spectrum. There's not like boxes. There's no boxes. There's a spectrum, and you can kind of put a little check or an X or a circle or whatever at any point along that spectrum for anybody. Like, you can look at it yourself and kind of decide, like, hey, I think, right, that's it's kind of like you know, my gender identity is pretty high on the womanness and maybe a little bit on the manness too. Okay, my expression is really high on the femininity, really low on the masculinity. Like, it's very individualized, right? It's all about yourself, and things can change, right? Things can change. You'll see that the sex assigned at birth, that is an actual box. You can't really change that. It is a thing. It's what you're born with. You are, in that sense, you are what you are, but that's about it. And that's only got to do with like biological, physiological things that you really have no control over whatsoever. But past that, everything else, like your, some would say like your anatomical sex through surgery can change, because now you don't have the right parts. Like, if I don't have a penis anymore, then what am I? How can I be a man in your eyes, right, without a penis? Something to think about. Your gender expression and your identity, it's all in your head, and it's all in how you express yourself. So that has nothing to do with what the hell you get attached to yourself or not, right? And you'll also notice that the sexually attracted and romantically attracted are split as well, because some people might be totally sexually attracted to men and women, but they only want to date men. But they might have sex with women too, but you know, they don't really want to date them. So they're all separate. They're all much more complicated than you might think initially, right? And so there are a lot of other kind of conditions where, if you notice as well, this is where intersect come in, where your sex assigned at birth intersect. Anatomical sex. So your maleness is pretty high. Let's say you've got a lot of testosterone, maybe you have a lot of other types of male expressions and male features, right? But you have something that would be traditionally seen as femaleness. So let's say one more common thing called gynecomastia, which is like, I guess you'd call it man boob. Some people call it that, right? But that's what it's actually called, and that's generally something, if correct, is usually like a hormonal thing, right? It's kind of like intersex. I don't think it's actually intersex. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. Someone can Google it and correct me in like 2 seconds, though. But I do know that it's actually a side effect of one of the things that I'm on to suppress my testosterone is to grow man boobs, and I'm like, hell yeah, give me those boobies, right? So on top of, you know, the woman boobs that I'm already, you know, they're in full swing. So that's just kind of a weird hormonal thing that just happens, where it's like, okay, this person is definitely a guy. They're a man in their gender. They're a man in their sex assignment. Like, they've got all the parts. They've got all the hormones and all that. Well, you know, the hormones are a little bit funky, but everything else is typical of a male, right? They're still a man, but like, why would you would look at them maybe and think, oh, that they have boobs. That's a woman thing. What the hell, right? But it's just a thing that it's another way of existing is the way I like to put it. Being intersex is another way of existing. Having these conditions, having these experiences in life is another way of existing, right? Don't think it is. The side effect of the systems where the hormones live type of thing. Right, yeah, exactly. Jazz is typing in game chat. It's more of a side effect of the systems where the hormones live type of thing. Yeah, that's about as scientific as I can get on it. I'm not really... not a doctor, I guess you can say. I mean, I don't know about that.
And the genderbread person that you're looking at.
Yeah, I do. All right. For a moment, because this is where the things you see on the screen here: homophobia, trans. This can go pretty long if you.
You're breaking up.
Or I can let
You're
this.
breaking up. You're breaking up.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Yep.
So I was just saying I'm going to have a little break because I'm wondering, Andrew, if you'd like to continue, or if you'd like this to be another different kind of thing, I'll definitely continue. I've got time. But I've covered the 101.
Yeah, I mean, totally up to you. And yeah, whatever you feel.
We could do like a little 5-minute interlude, like
Yeah.
a little break.
You want to do a quick break?
The washroom and
grab a drink.
Yeah.
Grab a drink. Have a smoke if you smoke. I don't know if you're old enough.
Right.
Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break.
Yeah, sounds
good. Bio break. Let's go. Let's do it.
I'll answer any questions so far.
During the break, please feel free to ask them. You can PM me if you'd like an anonymous question. We can answer it that way. You can PM any of the admins for an anonymous question. No worries.
Looks like there's fireworks behind us too. Yeah, and there's one question that I was gonna ask that maybe you can talk about when you get home, which is about misgendering people through voice over Discord, because I think that's something that like pertains to our community specifically, and like how you can deal with that and how you can circumvent it, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So you mean misgendering through voice, like in which way? Like, if you were to go on voice chat with someone, and misgender them? Is that what you mean, or?
Yeah. Okay.
So, are you asking like how to, if you've misgendered someone and you realize that, how to go about?
Yeah, so like one of the things I started doing when I joined Buddytown is trying to only use gender neutral pronouns as much as possible. So even people might notice that like in Arena I generally talk to people as they or them for everyone, and that's just because I find it easier when I'm kind of dealing with a whole bunch of people at the same time. Trying to remember which pronoun to use can be confusing. So like I don't know if that's like wrong or right, or if you could talk a bit more about that.
Okay, so I think we're on the same page with this. You have your headphones off. I don't know why, Queen. But I believe when you don't know someone's pronouns, to use gender neutral pronouns, which can mean anything, is correct. Because if you think about it in the way of like stuff like the mail person's coming. You know, the mailman's coming. I don't know when they'll get here. I don't know when they'll bring my package. That delivery guy, he might be always late, but I'm not sure when they'll get here. You know, using they pronouns is correct for someone that you don't know their pronouns for.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So in that respect, you're right.
I think I'll definitely, I do cover that. I do have something to say about that. I will get into a little bit, so I won't answer it too in depth here, but let's think about, there are a lot of examples that we can give, and I do have a specific example of it, a great example actually, that I like to read out, and you will understand that you're going to screw things up. You're going to misgender people all the time. Unfortunately, it will happen. Sometimes it's just as a result of a habit, right? Some ingrained thing that it's very hard to break, and it's also difficult for like ourselves to break sometimes, right?
Yeah.
You know, you have to understand that sometimes I misgender myself. Like I'll call myself a nice guy, and it's like I'm not a guy. What the hell did I just fucking say, right? Sorry, I shouldn't say that, but it's true. It's kind of like what I do. It's and I know that it's not a unique experience to me. It's something that habits are hard to break, regardless of what the habit is. And unfortunately, misgendering yourself and misgendering others is a habit, and it's something that we pick up on. So, for example, deep voice means man, right? Like we just learned this. This has just been that's like ingrained in us from a young age, and like there are certain traits, and this is kind of a mix because you'll have guys who, like, yes, testosterone gives you a deeper voice, but you also have women who have very deep voices, and it's like, holy crap, that came off of out of a woman, right? And they're not even trans; they are cis women. They just have deep voices, and the opposite can be said of men who have like maybe more feminine sounding voices, high pitched voices, womanly voices, however you want to describe it, and that has no bearing on their sexuality or their gender or whatever. It just kind of is a thing that happens in human diversity, right? So, we just assign these kinds of labels to it, based on our society, based on stereotypes, based on just a lot of different things, really. And because of that, we make mistakes. We make assumptions that are mistakes that we are like trained to do, even if we don't know that we are. And it's very difficult not to kind of fall into that trap, right?
Can I ask a related question?
Of course.
No questions from Foamy.
No questions. I mean, hey, I raised my flashlight.
What's up?
The sometimes just this casual use of things like saying, "Hey guys," or "Yo man," things like that.
Sup, dude?
Yeah. What's up, dude? Are those things that you personally, this, because I'm sure there's no standard answer for this, but
right,
personally find can be offensive or are more likely to be in a general, you can know someone and know if they're going to be okay with it if you know them. But as a general statement, if I say, "Hey, how are you guys doing?" I found myself lately sometimes saying instead, "Hey, how are the folks doing?" or something like that.
Yes, yes.
But would you personally find that as an issue?
My personal answer is I am working on it myself, so I'd be hypocritical to say that I care and you should never say that to me, because I say it all the time and I'm working on that. My answer is that in general, what you're doing is right, is second guessing yourself and thinking like, do I really need to use this word? Is it just a habit? And is there a better word that I can use? Which, yeah, there are. There are many better words, which I will certainly touch on as well. Where do you need to use such gendered words and gendered language? Like, no, you don't. You really don't. And that's the best way forward, truly, through more gender neutral wording, because why do we need to assign gender to things? Like what purpose does it serve? It's just this archaic thing that we just do. Why do we do it? Just because we do, right? If you don't have a better answer to why are you doing this than just because I do it, then it's probably not a very good reason why you're doing it.
Yeah, but it's kind of just what I do.
Well, there you go. Right, it's exactly the point. Exactly.
Okay, so you wouldn't necessarily take offense to it,
no,
but paying attention to it is probably the correct thing to do.
Yes, I think that understanding that maybe there's some people might get offended by it, some people might not, and that's okay. Either response is valid. The most important part is understanding that if some people were to get offended by it, that your response is going to be respectful and saying, maybe apologizing if necessary, adjusting your language, right? Fine. But also understanding that maybe you don't even have to say any of that. And also understanding that maybe there are people who feel like, I don't really like the way that this person is talking, but I'm not in a position where I'm able to say anything. And maybe they're like feeling like, I don't really like this, but if I say something, I'm going to get attacked. Maybe, however true that is or not, that's how they. So that's their perception. That their perception is their reality at that point.
Perception
right?
rules the world. Yeah.
Exactly. So those are things to be mindful of, and understanding that maybe even though you don't necessarily see it right away, your language does have impact, and the words you choose are very important, whether you are being conscious of them or not. And that just applies to everything in life, not necessarily just to the queer community. It's to everything in life. Like, that's why the words are so important, and people say like choose your words wisely, right? Like, they're truly very important. Like, the connotations of the things that you say and the way that you say it and everything all matters. And so with that in mind, it matters how you apologize and why you apologize to people if something like this goes down. Not apologizing just because you want to avoid an issue, but apologizing because you're like, I truly don't mean to actually offend you. I don't believe that you are lesser or you are a problem or anything like that. Right? And the apology doesn't have to be some long drawn out thing. It doesn't need to be a whole like big to do, right? Because it's not about you being offended that you apologized or you have to apologize or whatever. It's just to be like, okay, I'm sorry. How can I do better? Let's move on. Goodbye. Thank you. Right?
For me, it would be, oh, sorry about that. I was unaware. Thanks for correcting me.
Mm-hmm.
And for what it's worth, everyone here, if I personally do offend in that kind of way, please inform me. And from what I've met of the other people who have become part of Buddytown, I think most of them would probably be open to that kind of correction as well. Wouldn't you agree? People here.
I think so.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I think and everyone should be just be ready to be corrected, because you're probably going to screw things up, and you're going to learn that you screwed it up, and that's how you learn things in general. Like, you really learn a lot of things by screwing things up, right? So don't be afraid to make a mistake.
I never screw that
Is
up.
it wrong to think, let me know how you want to be treated, and I'm going to treat you that way?
That's the best way, I think. Like, people will talk about the golden rule, right? Is like, treat people how you want to be treated. No, that's not really that great. Then people will talk about the platinum rule, which is like, sounds even cooler. That's even better, right? It's
Well, platinum's pretty awesome.
right. It is, right?
What
So
is the
it's like,
platinum rule?
it's like the S rank, right? You gotta treat people the way they want to be treated, not the way you want to be treated, because they're not you. You treat them the way that they've told you they want to be treated. So that means things like calling them the name or the pronoun that they've asked you to call them, or maybe not saying certain hurtful words around them, triggering words or things to them, right? Like, that's how you treat them the way they want to be treated. Right. That's the best way to do it. Don't just assume that they're like you and that it's okay if I say this word or do this thing around them, because maybe it's not. And like I said, maybe they're in a position that they just can't really disclose that to you, or they don't feel comfortable doing so. Or maybe they're really at imminent danger if they say anything like that. They just keep their mouth shut.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally, right? Like, I mean, not to sound like I'm harping on you, but it's true.
I wouldn't ask the question if I didn't want an answer.
You didn't want to get slammed as an answer.
Slammed, yeah.
All right, I think we can move on if everyone's that was done a little bit of the break there. So I think we can move on to the social issues. You'll see Canadian flair there, right?
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Let's get you into bed. That's where you're supposed to.
All right, let's move on to homophobia and queerphobia. And I hope this is actually animating everybody. I love Sure. Yes.
Yes.
Pretty good.
Tag yourself. I'm the
Cookie is
alien.
going to bed. Cookie says good night.
Good night, Cookie. Thank you for joining. Look at that lovely little transition. So what is homophobia and queerphobia? This is something that I'm sure you've heard. It's pretty literal textbook dictionary definition, but it is a fear or hatred of those around you who are assumed to be 2SLGBTQI and of anything connected to the culture. And when someone fears homosexuality, either in other people or within themselves, so when it's feared within your own self, this is what we call internalized homophobia. And this can be expressed in attitudes or behaviors that range from just mild discomfort to like actual verbal abuse or literally getting beat up for being gay, which still happens to this day. And in some countries, you get killed for being gay, unfortunately, by the government. They just decided that that's not cool, so you have to die for them. So it's a serious issue, and it's an issue all over the world. Worldwide, it is an issue. Some people are fortunate to experience more mild forms of it, but it is all a serious issue. It needs to be addressed. And I know does not need to be said to anybody here, will never be tolerated or accepted in, and should never be tolerated or accepted in any sort of space who wants to think that they are inclusive at all. So I want to throw some definitions and terms at you. A little bit more than a 101, but they're very important. So we've got heterosexism, institutionalized heterosexism, and heteronormativity. Common thread you'll see here is hetero. So this has to do with heterosexual people, so straight people, yay. So heterosexism is like a bias against basically people who are not straight. And the belief that, being straight is just the way it is, right? That's where heteronormativity comes in. That's the belief that heterosexual is the norm. That's the default, right? That's just everyone's straight, and if you're not straight, well, then you're something else. So then you're gay. You're some kind of gay if you're not, a normal person who's straight, right? That is heteronormativity and heterosexism, believing that that is just the way things are and it's better that way. Institutionalized heterosexism is where that is a part of the very structure of your society. So, for example, in laws, so gay marriage was a thing. We literally had like that was illegal for a long time. It still is in a lot of places. It's still a thing. And that's institutionalized heterosexism. That's saying that being gay is some sort of weird and other thing. It's wrong for whatever reason. And in a lot of places, generally in the state, and some places in Canada, it will be brought up that it is a religious thing. You're not allowed to because of religion. And it would violate your religious freedom. Okay, well, it causes us direct harm and people die over this, so it's not cool. I think that trumps everything, to be honest. It also happens in healthcare. So, I mean, I have lots of my own shitty stories in healthcare. People who don't really take what I say seriously because I'm a trans person. They think that maybe my dosages are theirs to decide as a pharmacist. They're not an actual nurse or a doctor, but they decided that as a pharmacist that they can decide to change my dosage for me. That's fine, of hormones, because, you know, it's all the same to them. I've heard of other people who will be misgendered constantly, and these are trans males who have been on hormones for 5 years. They have a beard. They'll still get called ma'am because of paperwork by like people in the ER, people in the doctor's office. They'll just see a name, an old name, based on a card, and they'll say this. You know, they'll say Erica to a man with a big old beard, and then the guy goes, "Yeah, what's up?" And it's just like, wow, okay, thanks, that's great. So those are a little bit more advanced terms. They're great terms for people to Google and get a little in depth. So I just kind of want to touch on those because they inform a lot of the things that I talk about. I do want to move on to transphobia, and before I even get on past the actual slide, I like this picture because these are things both have been asked of me in person in real life. So it says, "Hi, you've just met Joe. You wouldn't ask him how he has sex, so why would you do it if you knew he was trans?" I have been asked about the sex that I have by a coworker at an old job that I had. Someone literally asked me about sex acts that I do, and that was my question: was why is this okay? Why do you think you can ask me that? I don't know. Like you're like a trans and you do this stuff, right? Like we can talk about that. Like, no, not at work. Thanks. And this is the exact same person, incidentally. Imagine that. Is also the same person who asked me about my genitals. He didn't ask me what I have. Instead, he just asked me, "How big is your penis?" Not a good thing to ask somebody at work, regardless of what their gender is. Don't do that. Don't ask anybody about how big anything is.
That's a trip to HR.
Oh, honey, yeah, that was... I mean, just don't. Why? What makes you think that that's a good thing to do, right? It's not. He didn't like my answer either.
Surprise.
So transphobia, again, very similar to the queerphobia, to the homophobia. It's an irrational fear of, aversion to, discrimination against people whose gendered identities and appearances and behaviors will deviate from the social norms. So, for example, like exclusion, discrimination, people might actually have internalized transphobia, just like internalized homophobia. So trans people themselves, we will think these very negative, awful things about ourselves because everyone else thinks that, and we just kind of think, okay, it must be true. Everyone says it, right? Trans people are freaks and weird, so they have to be because everyone thinks they are. I thought that for a long time, and it's still to this day hard for me not to think about that. It's a struggle for a lot of people. We have a hard time letting go of that, whether we like to admit that or not. We are among the most vulnerable targets of bias-motivated violence and bullying. And you might see another acronym down here at the bottom of the screen, and that's QTBIPOC. That one stands for queer, trans, black, indigenous, people of color. So these are people who, or people with disabilities as well. They're not part of that group, but people with disabilities and all of those other people, the QTBIPOC, are all marginalized and highly intersectional groups, and they often face greater challenges. So can you imagine being a Black, queer, disabled, trans person? Imagine going through life having to face barriers with regards to your gender, your race, and your perceived ability or disability.
I'm a two-spirit, indigenous, queer, disabled, mentally ill, transgender, non-binary person.
Right. And so think about all of these different things, all of these parts of identities of people who have to face just different levels of BS in their life regarding all of these different, what we call intersections or marginalizations. And when we talk about the margins and being marginalized, these are the people who, in the metaphor, think about the margins of a page. They're right on the outside. They don't take up the room right in the middle. That's for people who are not marginalized. That's for the people who are in power. So the marginalized people are all of us, people who are 2SLGBTQI, people who are queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, people of color, people with disabilities. All of these people are marginalized identities. So imagine sharing all of these different parts of yourself. Like, your life gets a lot harder. And that's where a lot of this, when we talk about privilege, that's what your privilege is. You don't have to worry about a lot of the kind of stuff that these people will worry about in their life and on a daily basis. Like, it's maybe something you read about in the newspaper and then you go, oh, well, that sucks. And then you go on with your life. But we don't. Like, it is our life. So I would like to stop for a moment and actually have other people talk rather than just myself, and also talk about how amazing this picture is. I really enjoy it a lot. I feel like I have to do this every day of my life. Where it's like, oh, you don't look gay. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just show you how gay I am. Here's my gayness, you fuck. So, think about this. For all of the people who are, I've never really thought about this kind of stuff. If a close friend of yours, who you thought totally was straight, they told you were gay, how will you feel about that? And I don't know if we saw the same person earlier who was here talking about how their friend chose to be gay. Okay,
Yes,
that's unfortunate. So if anybody would maybe want to talk about this, like if someone comes out and says, you know what, I'm gay, or I'm a lesbian, or whatever, like, how do you feel about that? What's your gut reaction?
Anyone?
Anybody, just shout out something.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's happened to me before, and the first thing I thought was I feel like I don't know them as well as I thought I did.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Totally valid, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. You feel like, why didn't they tell you sooner, maybe?
Okay, as a counter thing to that, when someone says something to that and you do it, it's like, you know what? You're awesome, and you do what you have to do, and you accept them. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You would just be like, hell yeah, I still love you, kind of thing.
It's a non-issue, is where I was going with it.
Great. Yeah. I mean, that's something that we hope for. That's for sure. A lot of people. I'll answer for some people. For if any, please.
I've never actually had that situation occur. I've never had someone that.
Do you feel like maybe you would have something like? Just imagine if someone did. Like, do you have what's your gut reaction? And it's okay to say something that maybe people won't agree with, but like that's the idea to think about it.
Because what I would have said, I don't know, 20 years ago, and what I would say right now is completely different, because I happen to know so many people through a friend who is gay. I met so many other people who are, that I don't know what my reaction would have been, other than I know it is completely different than right now. So I honestly can't even answer, other than I don't know.
And that's super valid. It's I have people that say that, which is amazing, which I love. But I often have people say, like, I don't know, I'd have to think about it. Like, people would say, I don't know, I'm really not sure, right? And they have a hard time kind of coming to terms with it. And I will always tell you that is an example of internalized homophobia. You have thought within yourself, like, there's something wrong with it. there's something I have to deal with or get over, or they have to deal with, or like this is a problem, this is something that can be solved, or how do we deal with this? Like if that's the way that you're looking at it, that's problematic. That's an issue, right? Because it's not an issue. It's just, okay, well, that's what you're into. Cool. It shouldn't even be a thing, as many of you will say. It's like, okay, great. I'm fucking happy for you. But for many people, they will, at the same time, they will say, oh, I'm so happy for you. But they'll also have those feelings of, oh, well, wow, I gotta process this. This is a lot for me to handle right now. But I'm also very supportive. Well, you do have some internalized homophobia, whether you want to admit it or not, and it doesn't mean that you're homophobic necessarily, as long as you practice your allyship, but you are experiencing a form of internalized homophobia, and it's something to think about. And another question to ask is, if you're thinking of two people of the same gender, two guys, two girls being intimate with each other, how are you going to feel? And let's go even further. If you see two men kissing, let's say that you're a straight man, you see two men kissing as opposed to two women kissing, are you going to look at that differently?
Honestly, I do. Like if I'm watching a TV show or a movie and there's a guy and a girl kissing, I'm like, yeah, okay. Two girls kissing, honestly, I'm like, okay, two girls.
Hey, yeah, you like that, yeah.
I sometimes
That's hot, bro.
That's legitimate.
And I'll sometimes be in a room with friends who are gay and know me really well, and they'll look over at me and they'll see me just wince and outwardly, half jokingly go, "No," and they laugh and I laugh, but it's not necessarily right, but it's still there. And it's not that I'm like, oh, I don't want to. It's not that that's wrong. It's just I don't need to see it, and I don't know. Is that wrong? Probably.
Well, and also and this is just, I'm sorry I'm jumping in, but just thought was there's also just a whole different level of public affection that people may be comfortable with, even in cis couples or hetero couples or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
And let's face it, some people are just ugly kissers.
Right.
Don't get all ugly, touchy-feely.
I don't mean to like
Now
kiss
you're
shame
just gonna have over
anybody,
that.
but it's like, dear, honey, dude, guy, everybody.
Put that tongue away.
Do we need to have a session to kind of talk about how this is supposed to happen?
That's the whole thing. You have to examine when you're watching those movies and you feel uncomfortable. Are you feeling uncomfortable because it's two people of the same gender? Or are you feeling uncomfortable because, well, this is weird, this love scene doesn't make sense, or like this is obviously forced, or like the writing is kind of weird, the plot doesn't make sense? Or is it like, ew, why is it two people of the same gender? I didn't expect that. That's some slightly internalized homophobia.
Like if that's your first thought, then it's like, why?
It doesn't make you homophobic. It means that society has primed you to think only men and women should be romantic candidates in movies, and that's your first thought is like, ew, why? It's not the same if you're like, oh, the writing doesn't make sense, the plot is bullshit. That's different.
Yeah, and even if it's in real life, even if it's someone you see walking down the street, are you going to still have the same thought? Like, let's say, yeah, sure, you're going to have the same thought. It doesn't matter who's together or whatever. You watch them just like sucking each other's faces in the middle of the street, and you're like, yeah, that's great. Get a room. Get out of here. We don't need to see. Right? But if one of the thoughts comes along is like, we don't need to see that, and also I don't need to see that because it's two dudes and like that makes me feel uncomfortable. That's where you've got that homophobia, queerphobia happening pretty hard, right? Regardless of if it's only like a minor afterthought, the fact that the thought is there, that is still a valid case of your internalized homophobia. That it's like you need to address that and think about that and kind of realize like, oh, that's kind of a messed up thought. Maybe that's not something that I need to feel. And why do I feel that way? What's making me feel that way? And like Slime's talking about, a lot of it is media and societal in the way that we are conditioned to look at these. That we are conditioned to look at same sex, same gender affection as sort of deviant or odd or weird and like not acceptable, or as acceptable as like a passionate kiss between like a man and a woman on the screen and like the finale of a movie, and they just it's amazing, as opposed to like two dudes making out. It's like the lens which we view them is generally quite different, right? It's very rare you're going to see that same level of romance and build-up and passion in a gay kiss as you would as with a straight kiss. Like the gay relationship and the gay sexual display is generally framed in this lens of deviance and like being perverted and like kind of like shady and taboo, weird, right? Like you almost always have that context, that overarching, that theme, that context that's like really overbearing, and that is super homophobic and queerphobic, right? That's the whole point, is to be like, why are people looked at in that manner? Why do we think of that first alongside of, or even second to, but just why is it there? Why is that thought even in our minds, right? That's the idea that we need to think about. And also, to take that a little further, is if someone of your own gender was coming to flirt with me, like, how would you feel? Would you feel a little bit like, oh, you know, I'm flattered, but this is kind of weird. I don't like this, right? Or would you be like, oh, hell yeah, I'm sexy, but like, no, I'm married. I can't do it. Or, oh, I'm not interested, or whatever, right? Like, how would you feel? If you feel like, oh, this is kind of weird, you know, maybe think about that. Why do you feel so weird? Why is it so wrong that another man or another woman thinks that you're attractive? So, if anyone wants to share, go right ahead. But otherwise, it's just kind of maybe rhetorical questions or things that you can really consider. Maybe you can kind of think twice about next time that you encounter this out in the wild.
I had a conversation with an acquaintance at one point about the whole comfort of being around people who were expressing themselves in pretty much any way other than what they were accustomed to in their sort of own little sphere. And the one thing that I ended up talking to them later that kind of stuck was I asked them, when you're having these feelings, take a moment and see what it is that's causing this uncomfort in you, because they're not uncomfortable at all, obviously, and they're not there to make you feel comfortable. But the one thing that was sort of like the flag that they said when I talked to them later that actually helped them notice things was, notice when you're watching a couple together, do you think what do you think about them other than two people being together? Because it was like the moment that you think of them as people, or people except, or people plus any other modifier, at that point they are projecting some type of label or construct or some type of expectation of their own onto those people. And they came back to me later and they said that it really just kind of helped them have a little flag that would at least get them thinking more. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm thinking of them not as those people. Oh, those are gay people, or those are or anything. It's like, or even just those are ugly people. You know, it's like, and realizing that the moment they stop, they go any further than thinking of them as people, that's when their own uncomfort level kind of came up.
Exactly, and it's kind of a consequence of the English language itself, the construction of the language itself, being that we describe something before we talk about what the hell it actually is. So we bring it in there to be like, oh, these white people, these gay people, these ugly people, these whatever, right? Before, like you're saying, like these are the preconceived notions that we bring into these situations. Like it comes with prejudice, it comes with like literally prejudice, prejudgment, it comes with these connotations to these words that we use in our head about what we are expecting these people to be and act like, and just everything, which doesn't always match up what it actually reality is. And that's where it's like, why is it uncomfortable? It's uncomfortable for you. It's not for them. If it was uncomfortable for them, they wouldn't be fucking doing it, right? Like they wouldn't be doing something different. It's only uncomfortable because you're making it uncomfortable for them. Absolutely. I love that. I really love that. And this is a nice little picture. It kind of ties back in with things, right? When we talk about microaggressions, it's the little girl and being curious, like genuinely curious. Are they a boy or a girl? And the parent being a super great answer. They're a person. let's think about that. They're a person first. They don't necessarily need to be a boy or a girl. They're a person. It doesn't matter. Why do you care? I mean, they're not asking the child that rudely, but it would be kind of funny. Why do you care, bro? Bro, what's your problem? But they're a person. Because
Yeah,
really,
mom
that's
looks
what-
down and just says, "Look, Betty, get woke."
you know what? Get woke. I didn't raise you to be like asking these questions. Come on. So I like this picture as a way to talk about microaggressions because that is a microaggression to say, are they a boy or a girl? Like, maybe some people might like that. Some people might find that validating. Some people might find that very upsetting because it's like, can't you see I'm obviously a boy? Can't you see I'm obviously a girl? Can't you see I'm obviously neither? So it's different. It's frustrating for different people, right? I really like this picture a lot. And the saying, my appearance does not define my dignity. I think that's very fitting for anybody, not just trans people, but especially for trans people. So microaggressions, the term microaggression is a term that's often used for, like, it's often brief, but not always brief, but they're commonplace, daily, verbal, behavioral kind of things. They're indignities. They're intentional, they're unintentional, but they're still something that happens, right? When we think of micro, people might generally will think, oh, that means small, that means really little and small, and so it's kind of like doesn't really matter. Sometimes we might that's true, right? But micro generally doesn't always refer to that. It does refer also to the fact that it is done, the aggression that is on a micro or person to person level as opposed to macro or larger level, like institutional aggressions. For example, a microaggression on an institutional level would be, and this is something that I'm very often is a huge question. One of the biggest, foremost questions that people think they need a 2-hour session to talk about is their forms when they want to. The one I just did a couple weeks ago was for a co-op, like an apartment co-op complex thing, and they have a form for accepting new tenants. And on their form, they have a part that says sex/gender, MF. And so my question was, why do you need that? Like, what about each individual tenant here do you need to know what their sex is? First of all, do you need to know what their genitals are? Like, all of that whole thing. Why is this important to you? If it's not about their genitals, let's say it's their gender, why does that also matter? So you know what they look like? Aren't you going to get to know them if you're going to be like people who are a cooperative community? Are you not going to get to know your neighbors? So why do you need that either? Do you want to know their pronouns? Ask their pronouns. Put it on the sheet. What are your pronouns? Right? That's a microaggression. That's just it can kind of fit both definitions. Some people might think it's a small little thing, which okay, maybe it is, but it's also at the same time it's not. It's also done on a macro level, more than a micro level, in my opinion, because it's institutionally. It's a thing that's an institutional thing. It's coming from a co-op complex. It's coming from a medical institution. It's coming from a school or a government agency or whatever. But that's like a microaggression on a macro level. They're asking you for some small little thing that for many people is distressing because they don't know how to answer. Like if they're non-binary or intersex or questioning themselves, they're like, oh, what the I don't know. Or if they're trans, they know, okay, I'm a man, I'm a woman, but they're also very maybe worried about what part in transition they're at, or maybe what do I do if it's a legal form? Do I have to put what it says on my birth certificate? I haven't changed that yet. How do I assign this? I don't want to put an M, but do I have to? Because I want to put F, but am I allowed? Like, that's something. Very common microaggression is misgendering people, especially on purpose, which is an entire total jerk thing to do. Don't ever do that. Don't ever. Even when you're upset. Even when you're upset with someone, never, ever, ever do that. That is the most utmost disrespectful thing you can do to somebody. That is microaggression, absolutely number one that most trans people face is being intentionally misgendered. Very famously, videos of people getting just so upset about it, and rightfully so. Right? If someone's told you what their pronouns are, what their gender is, then just listen to that. Respect that. It's not hurting you. Right? Just because their face, their body, their voice, whatever, any of other these kind of expressions don't match up, that's their own deal. That's their own expression and whatever, not yours. Right? You know, you don't need to worry about that. That's not your life to live. So leave it at that. I like to say it's a death by 1,000 cuts, because we face this every single day, and it doesn't matter how small these things are. But when we get to face this every single day, we get cut every single day. That wound never heals. You get cut enough times, you start bleeding a lot. It sucks. It hurts. You can't do it all the time. It really sucks. So you'll hear that term microaggressions a lot. Here's some common ones, and I really like this picture too, because what straight people will say is, "Oh, I never would have guessed you were gay," and what gay people will hear is, "I still use stereotypes to classify people," because it's true. That's exactly what we actually hear. We understand. We know that's what you're saying. You might not think that, but your intent doesn't always mean, it's not going to translate to your impact. So what you say isn't always the way that people take it. So here's a whole bunch of them coming up on the screen. I'll just read them for those who necessarily aren't watching. I think I'm watching at this point, but one of my favorites is, "That's so gay." How do you have sex? Are you a man or a woman? Welcome to new joiners and those. I don't have a problem with gay people. Just don't flirt with me. Just do it over there. I would have never known you were trans. You look just like a real woman. Like, I never would know, right? Who's the man in this relationship? That's a great one. I like that. And also the best one of all time, "No homo." We see this very often on Buddytown, unfortunately, especially with new joiners, especially with younger people who are new joiners. They will often say, like, "No homo," right? And it's just not. It's a really shitty thing to say, because you're implying immediately that there's something wrong with it. There's something bad about homosexuality, about gayness or queerness or something in general. And there's not. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just another way of existing, as I've already said. So no homo, there's a lot of implications with that, and it carries a lot of weight, whether people are actually going to be conscious of that or not. And it's unfortunate, because people will say, like, "Oh, it's just a joke, bro." Well, no, it's not just a joke, because there's a lot of weight that carries. And it's up to you. It's your responsibility as a person who's delivering that message to, to ensure that the person who is receiving that message is receiving the message you intend to deliver. It's not up to them to receive the right one and try to decipher whatever you're saying. It's up to you to be clear. So when you say "no homo," you're very clearly telling us that you're not really thinking that hard about what the hell you're telling me. I like what Jas is saying here. Hey, I'm not a bigot, so here's a bigoted statement. Right, it's like, yeah, I have a black friend, so I'm allowed to say the N-word. No, you're not. Back up. Hello. No. So, again, right, I'm not racist, but blah, blah, blah. You can't, it doesn't work that way. You can't just say something like and magically erase it. Like, I'm not transphobic, but, I don't really like you should just stop it. Just stop it. It's not going to work. No, it'll never work.
Well, anytime you use the word "but," you know that's totally invalidating whatever you were saying before it.
Absolutely. Isn't that what Dr. Phil's always saying? He's like,
I don't know, Dr. Phil.
Dr. Phil. Oh, well, Dr. Phil is praise be to Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
Can you explain, Slime? Dr. Phil says that what is that? When you say "but," you say just disregard everything I just said, or something like that.
No offense intended, but screw you.
When you say "but,"
That kind of thing.
you're saying, "Fuck everything I just said. Here's how I really feel."
I'm not racist. I'm just racist, and I feel like insert racist comment here. I'm not sexist or homophobic, but like gay people, yikes. Not a
No
fan.
offense intended, but
no offense, but well, okay. So I will give you an explicit and trigger warning. I'm going to use some crappy language here. I lost a friend about being trans, and they would send me often some really crappy memes and crappy jokes, and they thought it was funny. And so the last statement they ever said to me was, "Hey, man." Strike one. Hey, man.
Oof.
Yeah, right. Okay, no, actually, sorry. Strike one was, I don't know if any of you remember maybe it was a year or two, maybe 2 or 3. I don't even remember. But it was the person who was going to GameStop, and they got recorded. They were a trans woman, and they were recorded being kept telling the clerk, "No, it is ma'am. It is not man. It is not sir." And then they kept saying, "Okay, dude. Okay, sir." So she got really upset and started like breaking stuff and leaving the store in a huff, and that was very viral. And at the time, this quote unquote friend would share with me constantly memes of about this person, about this woman, who now I believe makes music. And he said, "Hey man," so that was strike 2, to be honest, because all those memes were strike 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and whatever. So that was strike 1. Let's put them all together. Strike 2 is, "Hey man, even though I'm not okay with all this tranny stuff, can we still be friends?" That was strike, 3 plus, right? That honestly, immediately I said a lot of things. I had some choice words, and that was that. The friendship ended there. I haven't spoken back to them. They've tried to kind of connect back with me with various social media accounts, and I've always just ignored or blocked or whatever. I don't have time for that. I'm done. Once you say something like that to me, I know exactly who you are, and I'm not about to engage with you. It's just inexcusable. It's not correct for you to say that. It's absolutely disrespectful. It was such a planned statement. He knew full well. I had educated him previously, so it was extremely upsetting. So regardless. Anyways, I like to inject a little bit of personal kind of stories into these, just so that you can see like this is some real shit that still happens. I live in Canada. I live close to Toronto, which is Canada's biggest city. I theoretically should be totally accepted and live in a queer utopia and everyone yay, but like no, it doesn't happen that way. It really truly doesn't happen that way. And I am one of the more privileged people. When we go back to talking about people who are queer, trans, black, indigenous, people of color, people with disabilities, any sorts of things like that, like I have very limited intersections in my own end. I'm a white woman. I am tall and blonde, and if you've seen my pictures, I would say that I can get by and be cis assumed as long as I don't open my mouth. I can get. I'll be all right, right? Or if I'm like, hi, hello, right? If I really work on it, I'll be all right. It's cool, right? I'm very privileged. I did not come from any sort of like I came from a great home. My parents were functional. Everything was fine, right? I didn't deal with a lot of problems that people would deal with. And yet I still have my own fair share of mental health concerns just because of who I am and because of the life I've led and the things I've done to repress my identity to myself. So it's always important to think about that. If you're privileged, to think about like when you're saying these things, like you're not living this life. You don't never have to experience these things that the people you're talking to and about have had to experience, and like the weight that these words carry. It's immense sometimes when you think it's just a throwaway little whatever, no homo, like those 2 words could mean so much to one person, and you have no clue, right? And now my cats are fighting. Stop that, Christ. All right, so we got a super word intense graphic. It's kind of not fair to people, but I really, really love this because it does lead into stuff I'm talking about when I'm talking about privilege, right? And I do think it's a great segue image. So I'll read it for people, and it says, "I never really related to the theory that being trans meant my body didn't match my brain. I feel like this is a handy narrative that puts all of the pressure and responsibility of change onto trans people and off of the rest of society. My day-to-day struggles are not so much between me and my body. I'm not trapped in the wrong body. I'm trapped in a world that makes very little space for bodies like mine." I connect to that statement a lot. And it's true. Like we exist in a world that doesn't make space for us, not necessarily just our physical bodies, but our existence. We don't have space to exist. We kind of have to make our own space. And I'm lucky And I'm privileged that I've had people in the past who have paved the way for me to do things like what I'm doing right now, to be privileged enough to be able to share my knowledge with you. There are people who paved the way, who paved the way with their lives to do this kind of stuff, so that I can do this kind of very, in comparison, simple things. I'm having a little talk and I'm sharing knowledge as opposed to throwing bricks at people. It's miles away, but they're both very important things. So when we talk about privilege, I'm sure that people have heard of that word. It's a very popular word nowadays, especially when you talk about things like white privilege. So let's talk about straight privilege and what straight privilege would mean. A great graphic here. It says sometimes it's easy to forget how good we have it. So you're right. Let's try to do that less often. I know it's a very Buddytown-esque kind of simple drawing. I love it a lot. But these are some examples of straight privilege. Jesus Lord. So your orientation is naturalized from birth. So that's heteronormativity. That's something we touched on a little bit earlier, where you're born and it's just assumed that you're going to be straight and cis. So it's cisnormativity and heteronormativity. You're a straight person, obviously, right? You don't have to come out. No one says like, oh my God, you're straight? Really? How did you know? Like, when did you know you're straight? Right? Has anyone here ever had to come out as straight to people? Ever to come out of the closet as straight?
I had someone ask me when I came out.
Right, but that's because they assumed you were gay?
Yeah.
Right.
I was with someone who was gay. Yeah. But
exactly, right? But it had nothing to do with the fact that's like, oh, when did you come out as straight? Because like that is a silly question to ask.
Of course it is. Yes.
I think exactly, because why would you, right? Because it's totally normal to be straight.
Yeah.
No one's asked me when did I come out as white?
When did you exactly? So you have a privilege there. No, that's kind of different. However, you don't have to worry about being outed as straight. Like, you don't ever have to worry the same way that maybe a gay person or a trans person has to worry about. You don't have to think like, holy crap, I hope no one tells people that I am totally straight, because I might get beat up for that. No, you won't. You don't have to fear violence because of your orientation, because usually the people who are straight are the ones that do the violence. People who aren't straight, unfortunately. And people don't ask you why you chose to be straight, because people ask you why you choose to be gay or bi or lesbian or whatever. They go like, why? What is it? Why I can turn you gay, or I can turn you from gay to straight, right? You just haven't found the right man. You haven't found the right woman. Whatever, right?
At the same time, fear the people who are saying that because they got some issues.
Mm-hmm. It's exactly the point. They got some serious issues, because that is a very incorrect notion. Yeah, you don't choose to be straight, you don't choose to be gay, you just are what you are, and it's unfortunate, but some of us are straight.
Not unfortunate.
It's very unfortunate.
What's unfortunate is people don't realize it is what it is. That's the unfortunate part.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is. Like, that people aren't willing to accept that diversity is nature. This is just part of the way that the world is, and humans are no exception to this. Like, humans,
and that's what makes it awesome.
Right. This is a natural process. Look at nature. There are multiple sexes. If they were able to like have the cognition, these different animals and creatures, to be able to communicate with us and say like, my gender is this, it wouldn't just be I am boy, I am girl. Guaranteed.
At the same time, you haven't met my cat. I'm kidding.
So in the same notion here as just straight privilege, but cisgender privilege. So you can use public bathrooms without fear of harassment. You can be a man in the men's room and no one will ask you a single question. But if you go into the men's room with a skirt and you pull that skirt up to have a pee at the urinal, you can guarantee people are going to look at you a little bit funny. You are not seen as abnormal or weird, because that's cisnormativity. People won't look at you 2, 3, 4 times to wonder what the hell you're doing here, regardless of which bathroom you choose, by the way. You can go into the bathroom like If you think your transition is not that far along, you go to the men's room. People are looking at you like, why is there a girl in the men's room? Okay, that's really great, but it's also terrifying because what the hell are these guys going to do to you? Conversely, you can go to the women's room, and the women are like, why is this dude in the men's room, from the men's room in the women's room? And you thought you looked really cute that day, and you think about it for the next 2 months every fucking day. So, hey, there's your privilege. You don't need to worry about that. You can access gender-exclusive spaces without issue for the most part, generally. Nobody's going to check your ID and kind of look at you and have to look down at your junk and look back up at your face and kind of wonder what's not matching, what's going on. Hey, do you have any other ID? Do you have anything else with your name on it that I can use? Because this is weird. All that happens. You don't have to constantly remind your friends and family about your pronouns. I'm very lucky here at Buddytown that regardless of any time, the way that I sound, everyone has used my pronouns. And so thank you, everyone, for that. Everyone who's listening, thank you very much. Everyone has done a very phenomenal job of that. I don't think anyone's screwed it up. I think I've screwed it up more than anyone else, which is totally fine. I'm allowed to screw myself. And you can generally, as a cisgender person, walk through the world and kind of just blend in. People won't stare at you or whisper or talk about you specifically because of the way that you express your gender or because of your gender. People are still going to be assholes sometimes, unfortunately. Sorry. About whatever the hell they want to be a fucking asshole about. It just happens, unfortunately. However, being cis, you most times do not have to worry about that part of it. You just get to worry about all the rest of the stuff that people get to be mean about, right? Just it's just an extra layer of that really crappy cake that you don't have to eat. My favorite slide. This is my favorite slide. The allyship slide, and as you might see, it is
Cute.
the unofficial, much loved Buddytown motif, I can say, not necessarily a logo. If you are interested, it is called Best Buddies, and the artist is
who?
Keith Haring.
Keith Haring.
Yes, please do Google him. He has very amazing, and he is a legendary gay artist who unfortunately passed too early.
Sad but super awesome. Absolutely.
Yeah, put your mic close.
I'm dropping out. No, it's right close to my face. And it's still. Is everyone good?
Yeah, you're dropping a little bit.
Am I? Yeah, am I dropping out a little bit?
You're good right there to me. But
oh, that's okay. Great. All right. Well, I can turn myself up a little bit more, I think, but I'm not sure. Well, we're in the home stretch, and I know this is a long presentation, and thank you all for who've held together to it. Thank you all for this, but I do want to talk a little bit about allyship and about what allyship means and being an ally. So first of all, you have to understand that you do not get to declare yourself as an ally, first and foremost. You are not an ally because you say you are. It's like, oh, well, I love trans people, so I'm an ally, right? That's just not how that works. You're an ally because you practice allyship. And allyship is something that is ongoing. You don't just, check off a few boxes and get your ally badge and away you go. Unfortunately, sorry, it takes more work than that. So an ally is a person who actually wants to learn about and support and advocate for the community. And like I said, it's a never-ending process of education. You can demonstrate it in many ways. And the idea behind it is that every human being deserves respect. And that is what allyship is about, is respecting everybody. So one way that we can demonstrate our allyship is by using inclusive language. And as you see by this lovely graphic, one way to use inclusive language is correct pronouns, which I just drank that up. Right. So give me those correct pronouns. So, when we talk about pronouns, let's talk about how do we address my trans friend? How do you talk to me? You have a man's voice, but you look so womanly. How the hell what do I do? You can call me by my name, that's cool. So you can call me Queen, that's fine. For those of you who don't really know me that well, you can call me Queen, that's fine. Like I introduced earlier, for those of you who might have missed it, my name that I go by in real life is Chris. But please do call me Queen if we're not that acquainted. It's fine. It's kind of strange saying that. I don't normally say that to people. Use the pronoun that matches their identified gender. So for my case, and earlier we did do a bit of a talk and everyone introduced themselves and their pronoun. So use that pronoun. So in my case, she, her. It doesn't matter if they're transitioned or not. It doesn't, and nothing matters. What matters is they said, this is my name, this is my pronoun. Just use those, right? If you're not sure, just say they, them, there, because that's not offensive. You're not assuming. You're assuming that you don't know anything, which is great. Because you don't know, you're not going to guess. Just say they, them. It's neutral. Call them by the preferred pronoun. And I like to say preferred pronoun because it's not preferred. It's just call them their pronouns. Use their pronouns even when they are not around. And I like this too. It says, what's the safest bet? Ask them, what pronouns do you use? Again, not what preferred pronouns, nothing. Just say, what pronouns do you use? What are your pronouns? Like, there's variations of how to say that. All valid. It's great to just ask, right? If you don't know, ask. So we talk about pronouns a little bit. What the hell is a pronoun? A pronoun is a word that is used instead of a noun. So it's generally a noun that has been mentioned, or you don't actually have to mention it. So really, other than our names, it is the most common way that we are referred to when someone is talking about us. If they're not going to say our name, they're going to use a pronoun to do that. So how are they going to do that? Well, really, when we look at pronouns fall into first, second, and third for the most part, right? And they're all gender neutral until you get to the third person pronouns. So here are some examples. So me, myself are first person pronouns. You and yours would be second person pronouns, and everything else that you see, she, her, hers, he, him, his, they, them, theirs, are all third person. And as you notice, the only ones that have a gender would be the third. So she, her, he, him. However, you will also notice that they, them, theirs is also third person pronoun, and you'll see my little bullet point that using they, them has been grammatically correct in English for centuries. What is new is that you are using it when you are referring to someone that you know personally, and it's kind of weird, and you're not used to it, and it feels strange, and you don't know how to do it. That is what's new. It's not new. Like, it's not like we just in the last 5 to 10 years decided as English speaking humans that we're going to do this now. So, we can say they and it's singular now. So you can quit your grammatical arguments. They're wrong. Sorry. If you want to talk about that much more after, I'd be glad to, but we can go on forever about that. The point is, it is grammatically correct. It has been grammatically correct, and I will provide you with an example right now. So, let's think about it. Oh no, someone left their cell phone. Ah, dang, right? I wonder if they'll miss it. Oh, you want to do it with me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, do it.
Dang, I wonder if they'll miss it.
Oh my god, are you okay?
I know, we couldn't breathe.
Of course they will. It's their phone.
That's not what I meant. I was wondering if they'll miss it in time to get it before the shop closes.
I hope so, for their sake. So like it says, you already know how to use this in they. So when a non-binary person asks you to use they, you can handle it. You can do it. You might screw it up. You probably will screw it up. And that's okay. Like we said, you correct yourself and you move on. But the point is that it's grammatically correct and you can handle it, because how many times can you imagine yourself saying this exact sentence, some of these exact sentences? The answer is, yeah, you can. I'm sure you can. Anyone who said no, I'm sorry, but you're telling a lie to me. This is an actual sentence that anybody who is listening and is an English speaker can understand exactly the context. You know that someone So the person you're talking about, the pronoun for someone, you don't know their name, you have to say someone, they left their cell phone. Why do you say they and them? You don't know what their gender is. Are they a man? Are they a woman? I don't know. So I wonder if they will miss it. Well, of course they will, right? It's all implicitly, it's understood. You know what's happening. No one reading this conversation or hearing this conversation is going to think, oh, that means there's like 7 people. Well, no. Why would you be meaning about someone left their cell phone? That was 7 people sharing one cell phone. I mean, it happens, but that's a little bit atypical, don't you think? People will understand what you're talking about. The grammar argument is old and tired. Stop it. So with that in mind, we like to talk about when we're greeting other people. Instead of saying guys, this is where people will say, hey guys, what's up guys? What's up boys? Or hey ladies, right? And there's like 1 or 2 guys. They're like, oh, I'm not a lady. Happens all the time, especially in my profession. I am a medical secretary, and it's very rare to find men. So I love it when they go, hi ladies. I'm like, yeah, I'm ladies. Great. That's awesome. But there was like one guy in my class in school, and they would say, okay, ladies. And you just hear him like from down the hall, right? And it's true. And this guy was a cis guy with nothing, to my knowledge, not trans, not in the community whatsoever. But regardless, that was not comfortable for him. He didn't like that. He didn't want to be called ladies because he's not a ladies. He's a gentleman. He's a sir. Right? So how do we avoid that? Well, don't use gendered terms when you can avoid it. Use gender neutral terms when you're addressing a group, especially when it's a mixed group of people, right? Although, if it's a group of people that you specifically know every single person's pronoun, then yeah, go ahead. Use like gendered pronouns for them. Just be aware that this is not a situation that you should be always using. Like you shouldn't always be doing the gendered thing, right? People know my pronouns are she and her, so they will, I feel, intentionally at work say things like that to be supportive of it, which I love. It's great, it's awesome, and it's totally cool. But if they weren't sure, they shouldn't do that. So again, I think we mentioned earlier about normalizing the practice of offering your pronouns, right? So when you're introducing yourself, that's one way of doing it. Hi, I'm Chris. I use she, her pronouns. Offer your handshake, whatever the hell it is, the situation that you're in. And people can offer it back. Maybe they won't. They might not be receptive to that. That's fine. You took a chance and, it didn't work out. Okay, fine. What did you lose? Nothing. Maybe you get a little embarrassed. Okay, that sucked for half a second. Move on. It's fine. Make it a normal thing. If everyone sees you doing it all the time, they're going to get used to it. And it's up to them to get used to it again, because like I said, change is inevitable. Good, bad, neutral, whatever. It's going to happen. So get used to it or not. It's up to you. It's going to happen. Right? So the shift is towards more gender neutral language, to more mindful behavior, to understanding that not everybody is going to want to be called guys. Guys is not a gender neutral term. As much of a habit as it might be for you, and as much as you want to justify it, it simply is not gender neutral. Hey, dude is not either gender neutral whatsoever. Dude is like awfully fucking male gendered, obviously. I don't know how I need to explain that, but it is. And again, like my example of one guy in a group of women having to deal with, hey ladies, right? Like that's awful for him. That sucks to be him. So, like it says in the graphic here, why? Shifting to gender inclusive language respects and acknowledges the gender identities of all people and removes assumptions. So be mindful of your language, please, and thank you. I think this is the sexualization of children one, and I know it's a great sentence to say. Yep, it is. Great. Awesome. Okay, so how to stop imposing gender binary on babies and their parents. A guide. So you can read this with me because that's going to be great with you.
Okay.
So you're going to have to stop saying, how old is she? And you're going to say instead,
how old is your little one? How old are they?
oh, don't say, what a sweet little boy.
They're so sweet or inquisitive. They're so happy or serious.
Oh my god, she's so beautiful. She's such a fashionista.
If you must speak about physical appearance, that shirt is so cute. I love those stripes. Look at those little shoes.
What a little princess.
They seem to be such a happy baby. How are things going with them?
Ooh, he's gonna be such a heart.
Literally anything else. Don't sexualize kids.
Yeah, stop sexualizing kids. They're little. They don't care about that shit, and neither should you with them. Stop it. Get some help. All right. So I love this picture a lot. It's really great. I often will bring this up, and some people might see me when we're moderating on Buddy Town. I might bring this up too. So how about we don't argue when someone facing an oppression that we have never experienced tells us that what we are saying is problematic. So when you have said something that someone has told you, this is offensive, this is wrong, this is incorrect, hey, don't say this, anything like that, which you might see us or any other buddy say in response to someone who's being impolite or rude or whatever. Like that, when we have confronted them with this information, that is not an attempt for them or an invitation for them to flex their debate skills. It's not an invitation for them to say, "Oh, well, actually, I disagree, and here's my evidence." No, I don't care. That's not the point. The point is, here is something that you need to correct and address in your behavior. How will we proceed with it? And when people take this as an opportunity to defend themselves and debate themselves, it's not a good look. It doesn't get anything done, and it indicates that these people are not willing to actually think twice about what you're going to tell them. They already have something set in their mind of the way things are. Right? When you argue, you're invalidating this person's experience who's trying to tell you otherwise. You think you know better, but you have never walked a mile in their shoes. Think about that.
To be impolite, you're being a dick. Don't be a dick.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You want to be nice? Don't do that. So here's some tips on how you can demonstrate your allyship. So for the first tip is don't ask somebody about their gender or their sex assignment or their orientation unprompted, because if someone wants you to know, they will probably tell you. And in the same vein, never assume someone's gender or sex assignment or their orientation, because again, if someone wants you to know, they will probably tell you. Like I've told everybody, yes, I'm a trans woman. Yes, my voice sounds funny. Yes, it's she, her. Just relax. It's fine. Be kind to people. Be nice. Who are still working out their orientation and their gender, and even be kind to people who already have it all figured out. Just be kind to people. Be nice, right? It's not that hard. Although for some people it can be very hard. That's okay too. Be kind to them. If they're trying to work on themselves and better themselves, that's good. Let people better themselves, because we need everybody to understand that we all take a different path, and I can admit to everybody that I have done and said some really awful things that are extremely contrary to the way that I am now and the things that I spread, the way that I talk now. So if I didn't have space and time to explore things and be called in and told differently, then I would never be able to give talks like this and to talk to people about problematic behavior. I would still be out there being a problematic little shit. So that's also important to think about. So if you're ever wondering why does Cliff and I, why does Cliff, and Cliff especially spends a lot more time doing it, but why does Cliff and Queen, why do we both spend so much time trying to actually educate and talk to people and maybe convince them otherwise? It's like, this is why. Sometimes people just need a chance to address the behavior and understand that, look, you know what, if you want to talk about it, it's okay to make mistakes. What's important is that you're moving on from it, you're learning from it, and you're understanding that what you did was wrong. Here's why. Here's how you can do better. Let's try to move forward with that. That's what we want. And we will spend time on people who are willing to engage in that. If you're not, well, then that's why you see a ban. Goodbye. If you're not willing to engage, then goodbye. If you're willing to engage, if you're willing to try, that's what being nice is. Okay, let's do this. Right? These are people who are going to listen and be receptive to us when we are sharing our feelings about the language and behavior that is being expressed and shared. Right? And that's how you demonstrate allyship, is just stop talking and listen when we talk to you about our actual experience and opinions and feelings. it's more ways that we can talk about allyship is that when you misgender a trans person, like we've said so many times before, just apologize and move on, because it's not about you, it's about the person that has been misgendered. Again, don't assume things. Don't assume someone's pronouns. It's okay to ask. If you're not sure, say something. Say, hey, like, what pronouns do you use? I don't want to screw this up. Normalize it. Practice of offering your own pronouns. I like to do it in my email signature. That's something I've seen called signposting, and that's what I'll do. So I'll say, for example, okay, I'll put my name like Chris, and then in brackets, she/her, and then job title, extension, email, whatever, your regular old signature at your email. I highly suggest that you do that at your work. If this is something that's applicable to you, if you have some sort of work email, if you use an email at work regularly, just slap that sucker on your email. In parenthesis, your pronouns. You can either put in the parenthesis, you can put pronouns, she, her, or he, him, or they, them, or whatever. Or you can just put it in brackets like I do. Assign my name, Chris, brackets, she, her. Done. Right? I've got a lot of positive feedback about that, especially when I've been communicating with people only over email to set up these kind of education sessions. They show up, it's a real life transgender person, and they go, oh my god, I understand why you put she, her in your email, because I called you that the whole time, and I'm calling you that right now, and it doesn't matter what you look like or what you're saying or anything. Like, I already know this is how I need to talk to you. So that's a great way, not only for if you feel like yourself that you want people to refer to you as a certain pronoun, but also to show other people who are trans or using other pronouns that it's okay. They can be open with you, and they can share with you the pronouns that they would like you to use, and you will respect that. So that's called signposting. You might as well put up a big old sign, put up a big neon sign on your head that says, look at me, you can be safe with me. And that's very inclusive. That's demonstrating allyship extremely well. Another important thing, again, like these are things we've said the whole time through, but call people by the name they ask you to call them. It's not their preferred name. It's not like don't ask people what their real name is. Their real name is the name they tell you to call them. That's their real name. You might be curious about someone's birth name, but guess what? You don't get to know that sometimes. So sucks to be you. Don't ask. If someone wants you to know, they'll tell you, just like their sexuality, their gender identity, all sorts of things like that. If they want you to know, they'll tell you. Otherwise, well, that's for you to find out eventually, maybe. Suck it up. So to kind of wrap it up a little bit, the key concepts of how to be an ally. Listen, respect, support, challenge, and educate is a good way to think about it. So just listen to people. Understand also that your advice is no wanted. Sometimes people who just want to just kind of talk about their experiences, they don't want you to talk about yours as a straight person. Like that's fine. We don't need it. I get it. It's like, well, I haven't faced depression, but okay, that's lovely. That's blah blah blah. Sorry, not to minimize. However, like sometimes that's important and it's great to share, and other times it's really not necessary or wanted. It's not what we need. And that ties into respecting people and respect their identities. Be mindful of your biases. Be mindful of your privilege. Be mindful of the language that you use. Again, like we talked about, the words can be heavy. So be aware of the way that you're speaking to people. Support them in that and challenge stereotypes. Speak out against things. Obviously, you see here in Buddytown, we don't stand for any of that BS. We don't do bullying. We don't do homophobia, transphobia, gossip, bad jokes, disrespect. You will not find any of that here. So make sure, sorry, losing my voice here. Make sure that that's something that in your real life, your everyday life, that's something that you don't handle, that you don't deal with, or you deal with in the way of saying that you do not accept it. Right? This is not something that's going to fly. And at the end of the day, try to educate people. Now that I've given you this education, spread what you know. You hear people talking about things and they're confused. They don't really, they think that people, for example, I hear people say, oh yeah, my friend transgendered. No, transgender is not like a thing that you do. You don't transgender. you are a transgender person who transitions, right? Things like that. Educate people, because ignorance is where a lot of these problems come from, and knowledge is power. So teach people what you know, make them understand, and it remove that like that mysticism around it, that remove that stigma where people don't understand what the hell it means to be trans, to be gay, to be lesbian, to be two-spirit. Like they don't look at it as some sort of weird, foreign, crazy thing, right? And finally, that's really it. I leave the last one open to Q&A. Anyone has any other lingering questions, or anyone wants to talk about anything like that, anything you think I didn't cover, comments, concerns, I don't know, whatever, anything else. Otherwise, thank you everyone for actually listening to me this whole time. As you can hear, I'm pretty much out of gas when it comes to talking, but thank you everybody.
If everyone wants to unmic their microphones and clap really quickly.
Hard for me to clap because I've got my push to talk on. So I'm holding the push to talk with one finger and trying to clap and not push the finger off the push to talk button.
What's the sound of one foamy clapping?
Clapping noises.
Exactly.
Clapping noises.
Hey, don't Zen shame.
Thank you all for
All
attending.
right. Well, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Queen and Pretzel.
Yeah, that was really good.
Chris,
Thank you very much.
That was great. It was really awesome.
I will leave it open that if anybody has questions with side of here, you want to talk to me, like PM me, or maybe ask it in Lobster if you want people to learn in public, if you're okay with that. And if not, it's okay to PM me if you have questions. I'm open to that. I like to educate. Like as I mentioned earlier, I do this regularly. I try to do it a couple of times a month. I usually do it at least once. I'm able to take off time from to do that, but it's something I like to do, and I think because like I said, I only came out about a year and a half ago or so. So all the pictures you see are what I like to call my light speed transition. So I kind of left behind a few parts of it, and there's a lot of things that I never got I never got any sort of education when it comes to transgender people, when it comes to LGBTQ, anything like that, right? Like my role models, unfortunately, I hate to repeat this all the time, but my role models as far as my gender identity and my sexuality was like people on Jerry Springer, right? And like that's yikes, not the best. So it took me a long time to come to terms with who I am, kind of how I feel, and I think what is a common thread among many trans women in particular is that they often will confuse their sexuality with their gender, and they'll think, well, if I want to be a girl but I like girls, how can that be a thing? Well, duh, that's what lesbians are, you dope. But it seems so obvious, but to someone in that situation, it's like, well, I don't understand. What if I kind of like guys too? Then like, what the hell's going on? Like, it's just everything is very confusing, and it's all individualized. So I know for myself, everything kind of got muddled, and it was easier for me to pretend that it wasn't a thing and just be the gender I was assigned at birth. And so I personally turned directly to let's be a macho man and go to the gym every day and like try to grow a beard and all that kind of fun stuff. So like that's what I did for like 2 or 3 years. And every single year my mental health got worse, my depression got worse, my anxiety got worse, my honestly just feeling like every day was the worst day of my life got worse every day. The more and more that I leaned myself heavily into masculinity, and eventually realized that, well, this is obviously not working for me. So something needs to change here, and it's my gender. I'm done with this.
Queen, if I could ask one sort of personal question, but if you could send one text message to your 13-year-old self, what would it be?
Fuck. I don't know. I mean, like, there's so much I would say. I feel nothing could prepare me for what is to come, right? I couldn't even just say get ready. I mean, how many characters? What's my character limit, right? Can I write an essay? Can I teach her everything that she needs to know, right? Like
that text message.
Can I tell her, right? Like what's gonna come? Can I tell her how bad it's gonna get? That's what it would be about. It would be really. I'd want her to know that like shit's gonna get really bad, but you'll get through it.
That sounds like a
And
good message.
that's my privilege, though, that I got through it. And we don't always get through it, and that's really sad. That some of us don't make it. So that's why I think it's important to be an advocate, even as maybe a straight cis person. You need to be an ally and an advocate and stand up for this stuff and teach people it's okay, because like I never had this when I was 8 years old and realizing like when I was 8 years old and praying to God that I could please have a girl's body. And I never thought anything. I'm like, oh yeah, all guys think like this, boys think this way. I'm like, no, they fucking do not, right? They do not think this way. If I had this education, I would understand that, like, some people think that way. It's okay, and my life would be much different. A lot of things would be different, but I can't dwell on that. And I think it's important that I can just share that with people who are younger and who maybe are questioning and don't know where to go. And now they do. They know that this is okay. And like, yeah, like you don't have to be thinking that you're probably weird as hell, but like you're also okay that you're trans. Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard one. It's a hard one. Just fucking get ready. It's gonna suck, but you'll be okay.
Thank you again, Queen.
Yeah, medicine helps, but not the one that I thought it was. Maybe that's a good little addendum to it. Like, being medicated was great, but like, wasn't the antidepressants, it was the hormone. That's what really helped. And yeah, like I said, you know what? You guys want to ask me, like, see, here I am. I just right up. You guys, right? If you folks want to ask me certain things, that's okay. If you're gonna PM me and stuff, like I'm open to it. I might not answer right away. I'll let you know if I'm uncomfortable answering it. That's okay too, right? But you can ask, and I'll tell you if you are just kind of thinking about something one day or whatever. Because I'd rather spread knowledge than to just have people kind of having these misconceptions.
I have a question.
Okay, what's up?
How was your day?
My day was good, thank you.
It's just like a goal of mine to ask how a person's day was at least once a day.
Well, that's very thoughtful of you. My day was very fulfilling. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you.
I was no longer on push to talk, so I could do it. I had to.
You had the one-handed clap me. I get it.
No, that was the full clap. Earlier, I turned off push to talk so I could do that.
Well, thank you again. I'm sure that most of us would like to go to sleep. I'm sorry for taking up so much time of everybody, but
thank you very much.
Thank you for taking part, and I'm glad that I could share my experience with people.
Sleep? What's that?
This wasn't taking up time. This was worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've never heard of this sleep thing.